Lacey is beyond cooked? Wait, why? What happened? Don't pull up on stream. Wait, why? What happened? Okay, now I want to know. He got hacked? What is going on? Oh no. Oh no. That is not good. That's crazy that there were mods. Ban the people that said Lacey stream. They were just trying to get me banned. That's crazy. And people still do stuff like that. It's just porn. They're just showing like a penis in a butthole. Aiden loyals from the grave taking their ops down. I don't understand. Why would Lacey be an op to Aiden? I thought they were. I thought that they had no. I thought they didn't hate each other at all. Lacey is FaZe Lacey, former Fortnite pro. Not even porn, just a penis and a butthole. Yeah. Not even boobies. Lame. Yeah. All right. There's some more Justin Baldoni revelations. Justin Baldoni is on the attack. And after that, we're going to get to the Adrian Dittman saga as well. Fear not. Okay? Don't worry. We're going to do that as well. But let's do Justin Baldoni, Blake Lively drama for a second while I go pee really quickly.
The legal battle involving the co-stars of It Ends With Us now in full swing, with 2 explosive lawsuits filed on New Year's Eve.
I would beg her to leave him.
Justin Baldoni suing the New York Times for an article reporting Blake Lively's claims that he directed a smear campaign against her during the press campaign. Baldoni's lawsuit calling the article rife with inaccuracies, misrepresentations, and omissions, relying on Lively's, quote, self-serving narrative, and showing examples of text messages that the lawsuit says were misleadingly edited by Lively and knowingly published by the Times, such as removing an emoji that would indicate a comment was sarcastic, which the lawsuit calls a calculated distortion.
They allege that the Times cherry-picked and decided to take snippets of negative things, negative text messages out of context and put them in their article, which ended up making Baldoni and others look bad.
The New York Times says it plans to vigorously defend against the lawsuit. Meanwhile, Blake Lively filing her lawsuit against Baldoni and his production company, as well as the PR team they hired in a New York federal court. The suit, echoing claims laid out in Lively's earlier bombshell complaint, alleges Baldoni and the film's lead producer engaged in sexually inappropriate behavior on set.
It's gonna be perfect.
Okay.
And then the lawsuit says Baldoni and his production company, Wayfair, and Mr. Baldoni directed their PR team to actively engage in their retaliatory social manipulation campaign. An attorney for Baldoni and other defendants has called Lively's allegations categorically false. Baldoni's talent agency, WME, told NBC News they dropped him as a client in the wake of Lively's complaint, and his podcast co-host announced her departure from the show. The legal drama surrounding It Ends With Us only just beginning.
All right, Chloe, so how is Lively now responding to this new lawsuit from Baldoni?
So her team says that nothing in her original civil rights complaint and now her federal suit changes in the wake of Baldoni suing the New York Times. But it is interesting, as you heard Danny Savalos say in the piece, he is suing the Times. He's not suing Lively. Now, he still could potentially do that. And will this ever see the light of day in a courtroom? Potentially, but it's a long road to get there. And as you know, it's a very uphill battle. We were talking about that earlier this morning to go up against the New York Times. So you could imagine they said that they're going to vigorously fight these claims.
Yeah, it's going to get nasty, it looks like, right? All right, Chloe, thank you.
Hey, thanks for watching. Don't miss the Today Show every weekday at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8
There's a lot to get to in this half an hour, and we're going to start with the legal battle we've been paying a close eye on. This is between former co-stars Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni.
Yeah, their film, It Ends With Us, made more than $350 million worldwide. But the actors say behind the scenes, there was anything but movie magic. And now Baldoni's attorney speaking out about his client's allegations.
He sat down exclusively with NBC's Liz Kreutz, who joins us now. Liz, what's he saying?
Hey guys, good morning. Well, Justin Baldoni's attorney, Brian Friedman, tells me they're not done taking legal action following their lawsuit against the New York Times, adding that he plans to release even more text messages between the co-stars. Friedman insists the truth is in those documents and that Blake Lively is the one who used her power and influence to take control of the film. Lively's team, though, they're saying they're going to defend her accusations in court. For the first time, the lawyer for Justin Baldoni is speaking out, saying the actor's libel suit against the New York Times will not be the last lawsuit in his client's legal battle with co-star Blake Lively. Do you plan to sue Blake Lively?
Absolutely.
You will?
Yes.
And what will you allege in that suit?
Well, we're working on it now.
Brian Friedman firing back at Lively's bombshell lawsuit, alleging she was subjected to sexually inappropriate behavior on the set of the film It Ends With Us, which Baldoni also directed.
Promise me.
Let's just start now.
In the more than 90-page federal complaint against Baldoni, his production company, and the PR team they hired, Lively says she was the target of a social media smear campaign.
That's enough of that. Today's leftovers. Yummy.
Memes, aesthetics, GeoCities, bizarre virtual cults, and Club Penguin. I went on a journey through the most chaotic years of the internet to find out how we got from character and color to dull minimalism, from chaos to conformity. We'll explore the unsettling side of the 90s web, the aesthetics and optimism of the 2000s, and attempt to explain what the fuck happened in the 2010s, because some of it needs to be addressed. Anyway, with all of this history, why does the modern internet feel so boring? It's like it's been reduced to 3 or 4 websites, having lost the feeling of exploration and surfing the web. Whether it's just nostalgia or something more sinister, we'll find out. To get from here to there though, I needed to start at square one, and I had no idea what I was getting into. You can describe the early days of the internet with a few words.
Fucking chaotic as shit.
There were no complex algorithms serving up interesting content, and you definitely couldn't subscribe to see more of it. I uncovered some pretty unsettling stuff researching this video, and it was clear that things used to be quite unruly, but this chaos really only started in the 90s. Before then, the internet was actually a reasonably quiet place. Its precursors were smaller communication networks like ARPANET, primarily used by the military and academics. In fact, the first message ever sent was in 1969 by Charlie Klein. Originally intended to say login, it was cut short to low, and when he rebooted and tried again, he technically made LOL the first 3 letters sent online. Still, these poor comms demonstrated how slow things were at the time and how bad Charlie would have been as an IGL. Luckily, the internet wouldn't stay in the hands of academics for long, and as we jump forward to 91, things start to get a lot more interesting. A man named Tim Berners-Lee releases the World Wide Web to the public, pivoting away from the strict functionality of early networks to something bigger. You see, Tim wasn't interested in profiting from this venture or even controlling it. He knew that a universal space couldn't be ruled or restricted, and lo and behold, this philosophy was the key to the internet's success. www marked the moment it stopped simply being a tool for the military, and became a place where anyone could browse, share, and access information. So, as web browsers started to trickle in and get creative, so did their users. And I mean really creative. Because anyone could make a website, anyone and their cat did. As one of the first manifestations of modern social media, GeoCities was a key player in this space. It allowed for freely produced, personalized websites, and the only requirement was that the text be barely legible in 5 different colors. This soon became what the internet looked like. Colorful pockets of information right at your fingertips. Sure, it wasn't all useful information, but it was there. It was random, and it was far from boring. Naturally, this creativity wasn't reserved for lowly netizens. Compare the websites of companies like Apple to their modern counterparts. The UI is colourful and bold, a stark contrast to the slick minimalism you'll find today. At the time though, this was still probably conservative. Look at Pepsi in 1996, Space Jam and Microsoft. And yeah, that last one is bad, but Ling's Cars looks like that right now, so the crown is where it belongs. Anyway, all of this was right at the surface. Things got really weird when you dug a little deeper. What I'm about to talk about isn't a creepypasta from 2010. It was a real, functioning website from 30 years ago, worlds.com. When I first heard about this, I assumed it was some kind of abstract art project. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to places like this. Still, while its true purpose is relatively unassuming, it hasn't stopped several rumours from floating around. Worlds.com was launched in 1995 as an online chat room. It was kind of like VR chat before the days of phantom sense and not showering. Within it were a number of virtual spaces to explore, and these got pretty weird. The Googie Room is one of them, having a hideous yellow wallpaper and these strange creatures flying around. It would not be good to take Googs in the Googie Room. Another notable location is Bowie World. Again, it's mostly unsettling because nothing makes sense. I couldn't find any mention of bows, and instead the walls were plastered with this random person. Still, these worlds are an excellent demonstration of early surrealism on the internet. They didn't have a direction, and they didn't have to. People were playing because it was fun and novel at the time. As noted by the website's creative director, there was a fascination with the possibility of reinventing oneself online, living a second and purely digital life. Unfortunately, on Worlds.com, people would end up taking this too far. In fact, the game has been kept alive for almost 30 years, with not all of its players being so friendly. In 2019, the YouTuber Nexpo posted a video detailing the supposed existence of a cult. He talks of a player named Nexialis who would lure in newcomers and walk them through worlds full of satanic imagery and sounds, leading to a cult-like following and unrestrained speculation. Who was he? How was he seemingly online all the time? And what was his true purpose? After some digging, it seems like he was probably just a troll, manufacturing some kind of urban legend. There are a couple other loose ends regarding Worlds.com, yet with the game having been randomly shut down recently, some of its creepier locations and stories might never truly be explained. Rumours aside, these sites sum up the early years of the internet, experimental and deeply personal. There weren't nearly as many people online as there are today, making it feel like a portal into some secret community. The web design was chaotic and inconsistent, regardless of whether you were making a page for your cat or a billion-dollar company. As the 2000s rolled around, however, things slowly started to change, but not before computers almost ended the world. So a couple things happened in the 2000s. Computers started to look a lot more like blobs than cubes, UI started to become as adventurous as the internet, and a bug almost caused billions of dollars of irreversible damage. We may as well start there. The year was 1999 and the hype for 2000 was incredible. So much marketing was built around futurism. There were predictions of a tech utopia, flying cars, this will be Fortnite in 2010, and whatever this image is trying to say. However, as the new millennium came into render distance, a lot of this excitement was crushed. Labelled the Y2K bug, there existed an error in how dates were programmed into computers. Put simply, many operated under a format that only considered the last 2 digits of the year. As a result, when it came time to transition from 1999, the year 2000 would have been indistinguishable from 1900. People were terrified that systems wouldn't be able to accurately process the switch to 00, resulting in worldwide software failure. This was a huge issue, as hospitals, airports, and other high-stakes locations could face critical damage. Luckily, after doomsday prepping, widespread panic, and millions of dollars, the issue was solved and avoided. And with that, we've officially arrived in the 2000s. For a lot of you watching this might have been the first time you logged onto the internet. Perhaps you got stuck into forums or games like Club Penguin, At this point, we really started to see memes take off. Dancing baby, all your base are belong to us, and top text, bottom text as far as the eye could see. The web was still chaotic, although it had been streamlined to make things more accessible. While this didn't stop infamous viruses like I Love You and the Pikachu virus, it was easier to use than ever before. How was this achieved? Well, partly by making everything look cool. Mac OS X 10 helped introduce the world to bubbly, rounded UI in 2001. Dubbed Aqua, it would jumpstart a more playful approach to design that you might recognize in Windows Vista and Aero. Glossy, intuitive icons, skeuomorphism, and bright colors replaced the functional look of 90s operating systems. Compare Chrome's 2008 logo to today's. It's become so much more flat and uninspired. Supposedly there's a name for this exciting phase of graphic design, but I'm too busy fruitagooning to tell you. Moving on, websites retained a lot of the 90s spirit in their presentation. This was especially apparent when looking at toy brands or TV networks. Look at Nick.com, the green gradient in the background, the unconventional yet interesting icons. LEGO also went through some cool revisions, with the Bionicle subpages being especially interesting. It felt like designers weren't afraid to take risks if it meant making a web page look exciting and unique. While the current site may be easier to navigate and purchase from, it just isn't as nice to look at. Real quick, who remembers all of those web games they used to have? I mean, goddamn. Exoforce, Glatorian Arena. I made some lifelong enemies on the LEGO Star Wars 3 website, on this minigame specifically. Honestly, I'm pretty sure some of these are like lost media now, even though they used to be everywhere. In the 2000s, the internet wasn't yet connected to every aspect of your life. You were still logging or dialing into this separate world, interacting with strangers on forums and updating your MySpace. Slowly but surely, however, things did start to mesh with the real world, and you began to see subcultures that were directly tied to the net. Scene is one of them, influenced by hardcore and identified through the exclusive use of this camera angle. You can partially thank Scene for the popularity of words like RAW, XD, RawXD, ZOMG, LOLs, and so on. Scene has made a sizable resurgence recently, with artists like Romance Planet and Barely Human keeping the fashion alive. Another growing trend you definitely experienced was the rise of online virtual worlds. We touched on worlds.com, but that was nothing compared to the cultural giants we're about to see. Moshi Monsters, Poptropica, Roblox, Littlest Pet Shop, Largest Pet Shop, and perhaps the most iconic, Family Guy Online.
Holy fuck, Brian, I'm coming.
That last one came out in 2012 though, and we aren't there just yet, so we'll have to look at Club Penguin. It's hard to believe it came out almost 20 years ago, and the iceberg hasn't flipped since 2017. The game focused on cosmetics, activities, and social interaction. You even had a fluffy pet thrown in for good measure, which was par for the course in the 2000s. The in-game chat, in hindsight, was kind of sketchy, but a cool feature nonetheless. These kinds of games were a staple of late 2000s internet. Kid-friendly, colourful titles that ran on Flash. You can trace a lot of people's issues with microtransactions right back here, with many having purchasable content or subscriptions.
$99 Club Penguin card. Who wants it?
Looking at older demographics, 2003's Second Life is considered the first example of a metaverse, allowing you to curate your own virtual self. As I mentioned before, I'd say the success of Second Life and other similar titles stemmed from a cultural fascination around digital reinvention, the possibility of living an immersive, purely online life. Movies like The Matrix further popularized these ideas, and the notion that one day soon, you could slip away from the constraints of your physical identity. These games offered many people escapism through customization and anonymity. Although, looking at the player base today, I think there are other reasons. Before we arrive in the 2010s, there's another reason the modern internet looks so boring in comparison to the 2000s. Personalization has kind of died. So many sites used to be centered around the idea of customizing and showcasing your personality. Where the 90s had GeoCities, the 2000s had MySpace and Neopets. The internet still had a DIY feel, which corporations capitalized on as well. iGoogle is a great example, a service that allowed you to customize your search engine in a similar way to MySpace. This encouraged users to express themselves by making colorful and unique arrangements. You could add gadgets, change themes, and a whole bunch of other creative stuff. Unfortunately, iGoogle was cancelled in 2013, and a lot of these sites are all but dead today. Why exactly, we'll investigate soon, because first, we've got to make a quick stop in the 2010s. Remember when I talked about the separation of the internet and the real world before? Yeah, that stopped in the 2010s. Memes started to remix, mold, and influence millions of people's vernacular. Everyone had a phone with games on it, and everyone had social media. But there's a reason the start of the 2010s feel so different to its later years. The internet gradually became more optimized, algorithmic, and less fun. We saw the emergence of aesthetics that romanticized the early years of the web, its unique design styles and culture. That doesn't mean, however, that the 2010s didn't have their own flavor and character. After all, I just made a 20-minute video about that. So what did the internet look like? Well, up until around 2014, it kind of looked like this. Or this. But what these thises are is made up of a couple thises. So we'll start with YouTube poops. You could find YTPs pretty much everywhere, from Newgrounds reposts to chopped up Instagram videos. And yeah, YouTube. My personal absolute favorites were the Michael Rosen series.
Nice.
Other typical victims were SpongeBob, TF2, and Hotel Mario. YTPs are still around, but we're nowhere close to the days when those three letters alone could bring up the peak of comedy. What isn't really around anymore is Flash animations. I've already talked about Flash games in a previous video, but animations using the software were just as prolific. Although a lot of the following examples were made in the late 2000s, they gained substantial popularity in the following decade. I'm sure you've seen Salad Fingers, Charlie the Unicorn, and Narwhals. This style of animation, often supplemented by After Effects, relied on the convenience presented by Flash Player for making and sharing your work. Sadly, we all know what happened to Flash, and if not, that's a story for another day. But the disappearance of Flash isn't the only reason the internet stopped looking like this. For starters, there's much less of an incentive to make short animations or skit-based videos. Sites like YouTube favor frequent and lengthy uploads, which is hard to meet when the production value of a 5-second clip rivals that of significantly longer uploads. I really hate to say it, but Skibidi Toilet is a solid case study of what it takes to become a successful animation-based channel today. A lot of its popularity comes from the fact that they have a frequent, predictable upload schedule and lengthy entries. This means multiple ads and, more importantly, multiple dollars. Unfortunately, it also means it's harder for smaller creators to break through, making the genre and the internet feel less creative. Speaking of creativity, something people did start to pick up on in the late 2010s was the slow transition into minimalism. This wasn't just the internet, it was houses, cars, devices, home screens, and UI. Many started to wonder if things always looked so uninspired. It seemed like corporations had given up on packing things full of character to grab your attention, with the new philosophy being one of they'll buy it anyway, send the graphic designer back to the lobby,
and don't forget his reboot card.
I'm not saying that minimalism isn't an important and valid art style, but in many cases it did seem to signal a shift to absolute functionality at the cost of personality. You could tell when a company made this switch whenever they started using purely flat design. For Apple, look at the transition from iOS 6 to 7. For Microsoft, the 360 to the Xbox One, and again, Windows 7 to Windows 8. The reasoning behind this is relatively simple. Your average person was way more familiar with how to navigate a computer. Having skeuomorphic 3D buttons to tell you where to click and what they did was no longer a necessity, but man did we lose some cool designs. Let's take a moment of silence for Windows Media Player, Firefox, and Safari. Off topic, but honorable mention to Jaguar. As this started to happen and the internet evolved into a more corporate, streamlined space, a new wave of nostalgia emerged for older design trends, in and outside of the web. I'm talking about this because it shows that something did start to change in the 2010s, and people began to ask, when did things stop looking cool? And so, around 2016, terms like Frutiger Aero, the Y2K aesthetic, and the practice of attaching core to everything emerged. These attempted to categorize and make sense of some of the interesting choices we mentioned earlier. Without further delay, let's have a look at some of the stranger ones and see how much they got right. We can start things off with Y2K futurism. I saw this fascinating post by How Vintage recently that does a great job showing how different decades saw the future. Where the 70s revolved around space, the 90s and 2000s envisioned a chrome-plated utopia. This contributed to an aesthetic characterized by shiny clothing, music videos like this, and of course, slick and exciting tech. Think edgy media player skins, Fonts like this, and the internet being marketed as a mystical, all-powerful entity with limitless possibilities. As I mentioned, there was a fascination with blending human and machine, leading to some questionable UI choices, with this being a prime example. On a slightly stranger note is the aesthetic titled 2000s Virtual Singer. If you remember those weird ringtone ads, this trend will feel right at home.
Look for the Gummy Bear album in stores on November 13th.
Eurodance music would be paired with mildly obnoxious jingles and a 3D character made after 72 hours of water torture. Crazy Frog, Schnuffle Bunny, and the Gummy Bear that I hate were all icons of the mid-2000s internet. I always find it funny hearing people complain about CoComelon today, when they were willingly sitting through 10 consecutive runs of this binaural hands-free hypnosis brain rot in 2008. Old Web, or Internet Core, is another aesthetic that emerged more recently. Naturally, it idealizes the early days of the internet, focusing on the freedom and individualism of the 90s and 2000s. Customizable web pages, old memes, and interfaces are recurring symbols. Generally, this does capture the essence of the early web. It's colorful and chaotic, and almost feels alien when compared to the current landscape. More to the point, it was clear that people were becoming disillusioned with the internet in the late 2010s. It felt like the nostalgia cycle had been dramatically ramped up, with sites like Instagram and TikTok flooded with terms like Y2K. There was an interest in recapturing the past, rather than looking to the future, where previous decades couldn't wait to jump forwards to this high-tech utopia. We were in it, and not everyone was satisfied. This is a trend that has clearly continued to this day. And with that, let's talk about today. The internet feels off. Despite having more content than ever before, maybe too much, the World Wide Web has never felt so empty. Chances are you only ever use a handful of sites, with the most adventurous thing you do being adding Reddit to the end of a search. Surfing the web has been replaced by doom scrolling. Forums and flash games have quietly disappeared, and the Wild West era is firmly behind us. So what changed? A lot of things, some more disturbing than others, but we can start with how things look, because that's mostly what this channel's about. We've covered all of the major years of the internet, and you would have noticed how design evolved over time. The 90s is remembered for user-generated websites, personality, and chunky UI. The 2000s continued this experimental philosophy, with the introduction of texture and 3D elements, making computers appear more accessible. All the while, customization remained a fundamental component of what the internet was, upheld by early social media. But somewhere along the line, you started to see a lot less gradients and a lot less clutter. As a side note, we've got to acknowledge that not all of these styles were well received back then. While it's easy to reminisce about these colourful approaches to interfaces and how fun they felt, things are the way that they are today for a simple reason: purpose. As the web developed, a clearer set of graphical do's and don'ts entered the picture. Do. Don't. Sure, this one looks more interesting, but this gets the job done. Cleaner, flat layouts that follow similar principles to every other website are easier to navigate. They might not have known this in 1995, but after 30 years of data collection, you can get far closer to the optimal design. Look at the Google search page. Countless rebrands and tweaks have brought us to where we are now. And, unsurprisingly, it's simple. Its purpose is to be a search engine, so that's pretty much all it shows you. The more time you'd spend looking at this awesome font, the less time you'd spend searching. So this less distracting one is used today. Sure, we had to get through Windows 8 to get here, and the Chrome logo doesn't look nearly as good, but the bottom line is that the old way gets in the way of the bottom line.
That's worthless.
Moving forward, another reason the internet might feel less fun is because exploration or surfing the web is long gone. The term surfing the web was legitimized in 1992 by librarian Jean Armour-Polly. It made sense then because it captured the excitement of exploring a vast, chaotic landscape. Much like riding waves on a surfboard, there weren't really any algorithms channeling you towards certain results. It was completely up to you what you found and how you spent your time with it. Discovery, not efficiency, was the key word in every search. But this wasn't just an algorithm difference, the culture was different as well. Let's talk about forums. Something Awful, GameFAQs, 4chan, and a multitude of car-related sites were a significant resource. Maybe not so much anymore, but many forums offered niche insight from other enthusiasts about pretty much any obscure topic you got your hands on. Fan of retro games? Here's a forum. Enjoy those anthropomorphic horses a bit too much? What is wrong with you? These sites were the epicenter of internet culture. Patient Zero for countless memes and sayings. Lolcats, for instance, started on 4chan, pushing the practice of combining humorous top and bottom text into the mainstream. Forums used to be really important, which makes their relative disappearance confusing. I mean, it's obviously nicer to get advice from a real person than an AI-generated website. They brought a stronger sense of community to hundreds of hobbies. Today, if you find yourself adding Reddit to the end of every search, you'll understand why they were so uniquely useful. Anyway, there's a reason the internet feels smaller, with you spending most of your time on only a couple sites. You are. And you can chalk it up to centralization. In terms of forums, Reddit acts as both the largest and the most diverse. There are subreddits for everything, all in the same place, reducing the need for smaller, independent sites. It's kind of like how YouTubers introduced the community tab and shorts, attempting to centralize the services provided by other apps under themselves. In theory, this de-incentivizes you from surfing the web because your social and entertainment needs are slowly being met by one provider. I guess this is more convenient, but it detracts from the feeling of autonomy that the internet used to have. There's a sense of sameness when everyone is using a single upvote and downvote system, the same UI and design. Furthermore, each individual community now has to conform to Reddit's guidelines and algorithms, reducing the quirks and individuality that dedicated forums fostered. But what if I told you there might be a more sinister reason that the internet feels so lifeless? Something you might have suspected but never really looked into. Turns out there's a reason I called this section the death of the internet. Let me introduce you to the dead internet theory. This suggests that the majority of content on the internet is being created and interacted with by AI. Entire ecosystems of self-sustaining bots that reply to each other and occasionally rise to the surface in clips like this.
Look at the book names. They don't have names.
If you haven't seen that, I highly suggest you do, but I'll give you a quick summary regardless. If you didn't know, Twitter has a serious bot problem. Most of it is harmless, funny even, yet when you dig a little deeper, it becomes a lot more eerie. The streamer Destiny was covering this in a recent stream. The way bots create an illusionary political force and tweet photos of stakes. It's scary because while it's so easy to miss, every so often you'll turn over a rock and find a vast network of accounts having meaningless interactions. The rabbit hole went as far as a mysterious chatter alerting Destiny to the existence of one Egon Chalokian, a seemingly AI-generated political figure with thousands of active followers. There were falsified court documents supporting his existence, edited photos of him with public figures, and far more. Whether it's an actor or a completely artificial person is unclear. To me, it seems like the first stages of a larger experiment. That being, is it possible to generate a public figure to push a message, even if they don't exist? I don't know, but the bots that follow him sure seem to think it is. Whatever the case, this does support the dead internet theory and is consistent with the uncanny feeling that things are less organic. Either way, let me know what you think. Of course, things aren't all bad. For the most part, they're just different, and change is weird. The internet is generally easier to navigate now. Aesthetics are more bland, but also less divisive. A lot of these older styles weren't received well at the time and were counterintuitive to productivity. While the web that you knew growing up is in the rear view, that shouldn't stop you from enjoying it today. Take advantage of all of its free knowledge. Learn how to replace the window mechanism on a 2005 Hyundai. Start that project you've been meaning to do for the last 5 years and share it somewhere. But above all else, subscribe if you like this video, check out the Discord.
Pretty good. What's the next one?
Morning, welcome back. Oh, I tired. You ever want to lay down all day while consuming as much entertainment as possible so you can distract yourself from life? Like some sort of weird human baby? Or a human turned into a worm. It's way easier to do nothing compared to dealing with all your grown-up responsibilities. No one told me about taxes, bills every month, the tedious task of thinking of what to eat every single day for the rest of my life. Sheesh. Can't a guy just be a baby again? Unfortunately, that's not a possibility for the majority of us until we can figure out how to Benjamin Button ourselves. So the next best thing is bed rotting, eh? We're told that if we embrace hustle culture, work really hard, then we can achieve our dreams. The amount of effort you put into your career, the more well off you'll be during retirement age. Your future is created by what you do today, said the president of some country. So why me have graduate degree, but work as barista with no house or car?
No, this is Patrick.
Well, that's kind of the reality we live in now. The American dream has literally turned into something you can only see when you're dreaming. No matter how many hours you put into your career, how much you invest into your education, which ends up being a piece of paper and bank account jump scare, unless you're born wealthy or with a little bit of nepotism on your side, life's just one long slugfest of working until you're old and then... That's kind of soul crushing. So taking the entire day off from time to time to rest and not think about 1,000 things at once helps us avoid burning out. The best feeling is working really hard, then taking 1 to 2 days off with your brain turned off to do nothing. Although bed rotting is a trendy activity we've been seeing that goes further than a day of self-care. You're in your room, laying in bed all day, except you're not sleeping, but doing passive activities to avoid life, like scrolling on your phone, watching movies, counting the pores on the ceiling. Think of it as stress-inducing procrastination, where instead of relaxing at a spa, you're closing your eyes so you don't notice that the building is actually on fire. You can find a lot of content from Gen Z and millennials sharing their bed rotting experiences, either for clout and views since it's trendy to do so, or to connect with others who are going through something similar. There's been a shift in the public sentiment from this being a quirky activity to this isn't good. It depends on the severity. A little bit of bed rotting can just be someone taking time off, but extreme levels can be linked with someone who's mentally unwell, especially when you see rooms that don't have floors anymore because it's covered with so much junk, and the bowls and dishes with old food in them started making their own clothes to wear.
Bed rotting is a trend where you just kind of enjoy the time that you have in your bed.
You can see this person right here on TikTok who made a video about their trend. They have cups laying around their room just filled with mold because they're just bed rotting. All of these cups, Chick-fil-A containers, all of this stuff has just been piling up because all they do is lay in their bed all day.
I know we shouldn't eat mold, but why it look like I kind of want to eat it? We shouldn't be glamorizing this behavior, but focus on curbing it instead by sharing tips or showing our progress when we finally decide to clean our rooms.
Here's what you're gonna do if you've already
Relax. Let's relax. Let's relax. This is what we're working on today. It's almost done. Let's continue.
rotted half the day away, and you kind of regret it.
So that was a little taste of bed rotting in the West. Now in Asia, this isn't just a concerning phase anymore. A few cups with moldy drink in them is nothing compared to the DIY hill you made in your own home out of trash. I like sledding on a fluffy white hill as much as the next person, but this seems like a biohazard. There are two content creators from Japan that kept popping up on my timeline who have quite the interesting following. The first one is Haritsu, an Indonesian college dropout living in Japan, who's known for cooking food that is well beyond its expiration date, eating it, and somehow surviving. And we're not talking about a yogurt that's a few days past its best before date. I saw this man take Resident Evil looking rice from underneath the sink, give it a bath, then make it into a somewhat decent looking dish. You would have never known how old and how unrefrigerated his ingredients were. This is a health inspector's nightmare. If they went inside his house, they would cry, fail him, and then shut down the kitchen. This isn't even a restaurant. At least he's not wasteful. The second creator is Shiro Kumatian Daisuke 1999, who's infamous for living in a home covered in trash while sharing this small space with a lot of roommates. Sure, times are tough and we gotta do what we gotta do, but it's like more than a reasonable amount of people. Between all of them, there's at least 1,000 legs, 1,000 arms, bugs. her roommates are bugs.
マジで無理なんだけど、大きすぎ、でかすぎ、やばすぎ共和国、大きすぎ共和国、でかすぎ共和国、やばすぎ共和国。
Damn, if all these uninvited guests showed up in my home, I would have to put on a full production of Stomp, or at least a K-pop fan cam from Inkigayo. No fear of cockroaches is actually a pretty impressive skill to have. Japan has this lady, we have Asmongold, who's reacted to some of my videos. I kind of feel like that roach that was in his house.
Get him out of me! What are you doing, bro? Get out of my...
But wow, those moldy cups are basically a cute little garnish compared to living with 5,000 freeloading roommates that don't pay rent. At least they don't take up a lot of room, because they sleep on the walls. That being said, I'm not 100% sure if this content is made by people who are actually going through something, or if it's manufactured for engagement and views. We'll look into how all these topics tie in with each other. Why is this letting your living space turn into a landfill phenomenon so much more severe in Asia? Well, let's talk about their work culture and how intense it can be compared to our silly little corporate errands and elite employee bosses. In China, the belief is that the harder you work, the more will pay off. You put in 40 years of working really hard, and the fruits of your labor should show that, which was true many decades ago when the economy was thriving. There wasn't as much competition in the market. You could buy home, car, purse, family, working the same job for your entire life. Now, you'd be lucky to even afford one of these things. The 996 culture became a normal way of living, where you work from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week. Putting in your 40 hours a week is child's play compared to this. You're expected to live this way if you want to be successful. If you don't want to conform though, that's totally fine. Someone else that's younger and less tired will take your place in a heartbeat. The Asian workforce is so competitive. Companies even encourage their employees to reveal their punch-in hours like a badge of honor. Whoever is the most overworked gets the praise. If you're working the minimum amount of hours required while having a healthy work-life balance, boo! Well, putting in overtime here. What are you doing? This expectation that you need to dedicate your entire life to work for a mediocre life is causing younger generations to realize, bruh, this sucks. It's like watching the starry-eyed graduate who's excited to join the workforce turn into the bitter, jaded employee who's ready to retire in the span of 5 years instead of 50 years. You know what you get after working 50 years for a company nowadays? An email.
50 years. 7-Eleven.
In 2022, a term called Bailan started trending in Chinese online gaming communities, which translates to laying flat and lowering one's goals. Basically saying, no thanks, I think I'll pass on this crazy work lifestyle. There's a lot of talented, hardworking people out there who want to make their career the main focus of their lives. But not everyone has to live like that, right? What's the point in working so hard if we're gonna stress ourselves out until we develop health issues? We're still gonna be scraping the bottom of the barrel while the rich get even richer. So doing just enough to get by might be a better option for some, and there's less risk of getting burnt out. Basically, keep your expectations low for everything you do in life. Japan also has a similar working culture. It's based on intense commitment, ethics, and extreme dedication to the company you're working for. If you're just starting out in the workforce, they have a strict hierarchy system you need to follow. If the boss says, put on a furry suit and start serving your country, then you better start learning that K-pop choreo ASAP. Also, think I'm going through a phase right now. There have been one too many furry references in my videos recently. You also need to show that you're a team player by drinking with your coworkers every night. How does that show you're a team player? Well, it's all about tradition and conformity. If you're the only one who goes home, boo! And forget about sleep, you might be able to sneak in a quick nap on the subway ride home before you need to show up for your next shift, but hey, that's the culture. Did I also mention Japan has the highest levels of working hours in the world, where employees can average 80 hours of unpaid overtime per month? The anime Zom 100 does a really great job at showcasing this lifestyle in their first episode. All this pressure from work, school, and family to fit into your expected societal role, you can see why this bleak overview of the future is causing younger generations to be discouraged, which has given rise to people adopting a neat lifestyle, not as in a clean person, but as a not in education, employment, or training person. There's no long-term goals here, just surviving through each day by doing the bare minimum. As long as you have food, housing, and entertainment, then you're solid. A more intense form of the neat lifestyle is a hikikomori, which is a Japanese word that translates to pulling inward, being confined. This is where you withdraw yourself from society, where you basically never leave your home. Described as loners or modern-day hermits, it usually consists of people in their 20s to late 30s who are still living with their parents and rely on their support.
In Japan, there's said to be at least 500,000 million hikikomori. It's thought that the numbers could be double that because so many of them go uncounted. Most are man 15 to 39. Some experts believe that it's a condition caused by traumatic experiences or shame or grief.
Could the pressures of Asian societies be the root cause of these content creators posting their strange lifestyles online? Maybe. That's just a theory. A moldy rice cooker theory. Speaking of food that would definitely shave off years of a regular person's life, either this guy has the strongest immune system in the world, or the soap he uses to wash his food can eliminate every single disease on the planet. He's known for taking rice that's half food, half a living organism, and turning it back to normal by giving it a bath.
Fu wa fu wa. なんかいつもと違うパターンだなこれ。何これ。普通にこのまま食えそう。わあ、綺麗綺麗ですね。なんかこれでもうまそう。はい、完成。うまそう。
Other than committing multiple health code violations, he's a pretty decent cook. It's no Michelin star meal, but watching him turn expired food into a edible-ish... I was curious after watching so many of his TikToks. Can you actually wash away mold from your food, eat it, and not get sick? Sources say it depends, but usually, no! What's even more interesting is that he's never gotten sick from doing this. Do you ever get sick? I never get sick. Even I find it hard to believe that I've never even had diarrhea because of the food I eat. Especially during my first year on TikTok. I was not that popular, so all I could afford to eat was the rotten food. But yeah, I think I am freakishly healthier than normal people. Or maybe I'm just used to it by now. Damn. I should have eaten more dirt when I was a kid. He microdosed himself on so much bacteria that he's turned into a walking cold effects pill. Look at him, not believing in storage containers, utensils, and proper cooking services.
Yeah. これを落としましょう。完璧。よし。これ一旦どかしましょう。
Oop. Just a little seasoning from the bed for some flavor. I know the microwave has a built-in plate, but you got a regular plate right there. I'm also showing the least scary parts of his TikToks. Some of the food he scrunches up looks like it came from a nightmare. Okay, if you don't think about what these ingredients look like before, he made a slightly upgraded Lunchable pizza.
はい、完成。いただきます。
After doing this for some time, he's built up a cult following that's let him move into a bigger and cleaner living space. This is a literal rags and mold to riches story. How do you feel about your content now? I started TikTok at the rock bottom of my life. That time, I felt like I couldn't do anything right, like my life was just going to be a waste. But I'm glad I started my TikTok in Japan. People are warm there and they supported my content from the very beginning. Now I have more friends and I am happy in my life. Do you wish to continue making these videos? Yeah, because this is my brand now. And I like doing it, not just for the content, but because I genuinely like it. Even now when I can afford nice food, I still wish to continue eating rotten food. Anyways, a comb as a spoon is wild. We have a strange fascination with observing people at their worst and then rooting for them to get better. The other content creator who I mentioned, who is also in a similar living situation as Haritsu, also has a comb. Here's her reviewing which type of flour is the best type of dry shampoo for unwashed hair.
Let's cancel. このお友達で Let's 検証タイム米粉なんかねお米って万能なイメージがあるんで串につけたあちょっとさらってなったすごいお米の力
I will say, she's definitely a better cook compared to the previous jump scares we saw. Plus, the ingredients she uses are not moldy or scary looking. Thank God, the bare minimum. This pasta looks pretty appetizing. I would eat it if it was served to me. Although, can I take my food to go? There are one too many cooks in this kitchen, and they keep coming towards my food. It's making me nervous.
だから今日の夜ご飯第216円だよ。やっぱね、パスタミートソースが一番好きどす。んでこれスーパーの箸だから無用だし。いきます。
Sorry, I couldn't concentrate on my food because I had to keep an eye out for bugs wandering into the pot, which surprisingly didn't even notice the fresh food being cooked right in front of them. They went in every direction that wasn't the food. Someone said a collab with Haritsu would bring back the bubonic plague, or would it actually create super evolved white blood cells? Her videos are a weird combination of calming and anxiety inducing. It's like if you took a cooking ASMR video and green screened it into a unlivable home.
200円ちょいって高い方だよね。まあでもたまには2日連続昨日とで2日連続か。で最後に使うなこれ。もうこれでね何作るか分かるよね。だからねちょっとねフォロワー10万人達成した記念にカレー食べたいななんて。だから野菜が玉ねぎと人参、お肉鶏肉、主食ご飯、唯一の調味料カレール。10万人記念。これはね前買ったやつの余り。
I'm assuming she's used to living like this. There's not a hint of fear in her voice. And does this pod also have bug-repelling force field properties built into it? What the heck kind of advanced products are Japanese people making? She's also gained a cult following herself, with her TikToks getting millions of views. The audience reaction, based on the comments, is usually confused, scared, worried, and fascinated, since her demeanor doesn't really match her lifestyle. I think the brand she's going for is a subculture in Japan called Jirai-kei, or landmine style, an aesthetic that combines cute feminine gothic fashion with someone who is on the verge of an emotional breakdown. Some people only wear the fashion, while others embrace the entire lifestyle. She even did her own cosplay of landmine style makeup. I think it might be a parody, but I'm not sure.
この格好でこの顔で歩き来た。
After watching a bunch of her content, I'm starting to wonder if this is actually real or some kind of social experiment. I use Google Translate to read her bios and captions since it's all in Japanese, so take this broken English with a grain of salt. Concurrent viewership is #1 in Japan. The most entertaining and genius streamer in Japan. Unauthorized reproduction prohibited. Legal action taken. There are even comments questioning if she actually lives in this house. First of all, how would you even sleep? Second, do bugs need sleep? It's hard to say for sure if this is a cosplay of someone with a really strange lifestyle. If it is, then interesting. You definitely have people curious about the character you're playing, but if she's actually going through something, is the audience that she's building enabling her unhealthy behavior? Or is this just a simulation? Or will this be another moldy rice to riches story? All jokes aside, no one should be thinking this is a lifestyle to strive for. A little bed rotting here and there in moderation is okay as long as you can pick yourself up afterwards. These extreme cases of gaining a following by living in a garbage house are rare instances of someone getting famous by showcasing their bizarre lifestyle, when in reality, there are a lot of people struggling like this without the money and fame. It's very fascinating, and I'm seated for some more plot development. Do these people end up cleaning their houses and getting their life together? Also wondering, is this the secret to turning your immune system into an impenetrable fortress? Cause how are they still out here looking normal? I'm surprised they're not turning green like a Sims or that green lady from Wicked. They must have plus 100 and poison resistance or something. Spending 5 minutes in any of these houses would have me feeling nausea, heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, diarrhea. Hey, Pepto-Bismol! You know what else can prevent you from getting sick? The YouTube algorithm. Don't forget to give this video a like if you enjoyed the content to see more of my videos. You'll also get a +2 stat boost against germs, toxins, and the common cold. Disclaimer, percentages can vary based on individual experiences. Have a good day, try not to be dumb, and see you in the next one.
I went thrifting the other day and it was really successful. Now that
Greetings, my good bitches. The name's Francis, Coke Francis. I'm an editor, Twitch streamer, drag artist, and I'm here because you saw the title, you clicked on it, and here we are. I'm turning 30 next month, and I can count on one hand the amount of times I've seen my home country, the United States, truly be united. Most recently, it was our collective thirsting over that Luigi's Mansion fellow. Before that, it was wanting James Corden permanently exiled after that Let's Get Loud video. And before that, it was wanting Public Enemy #1 and America's Next Drag superstar Osama bin Laden nuked from orbit. I realize that there are currently people out there who are old enough to drink, but not old enough to remember this one event that single-handedly changed almost every aspect of American life. I'm on thin ice with the YouTube partner program for even talking about this, so if you really don't know what happened, just like ask anyone over the age of 25. I don't know. So this guy was in hiding for 10 years and then he was finally gunned down in 2011. Some say it was SEAL Team 6, others say it was this SEAL who tweeted that he wanted this group of young male Kamala voters as his personal concubines. So,
who's to say?
Either way, pretty big day for the US, and I'll never forget Barack Obama's swag walk away from the podium after announcing this news to the nation. So after this, US forces seized the shared computer found at his hideout in Pakistan and searched his hard drive to try and piece together the truth about this criminal mastermind. And what they found was, kind of really funny. I mean, not everything was funny. Some of it was some of the most horrific content that you'd ever see in your life. And I'm obviously not going to go into detail about it, not just for monetization purposes, but out of respect for the people who were affected. Bin Laden was one of the most evil figures of the 21st century. We already know this. But based on the contents of his hard drive, he was also apparently a massive weeb. Yes, you heard that correctly. Interspersed between the Al-Qaeda secrets that the FBI had been looking for, they also found movies, TV shows, anime, video games, hentai video games, and most importantly, this picture. Now again, this was a shared computer and he had a bunch of kids, so not to picture. Now again, video games, and most importantly, this picture. Now again, this was a shared computer and he had a bunch of kids, so this picture.
What the fuck? So weird.
Now again, this was a shared computer and he had a bunch of kids, so not to rain on our parade or anything, but the likelihood is far greater that at least one of his kids was a massive anime nerd rather than the dude himself. But hey, you never know. He wasn't exactly a fan of Western media, but everyone has their guilty pleasures. It's always the most homophobic politicians you see tapping their feet in the bathroom stalls at the Minneapolis airport. So who's to say that America's Public Enemy #1 didn't love Disney, or Metroidvanias, or Final Fantasy? Anyway, there were certainly some spicy entries in the list that's currently publicly available on the CIA website, and I decided to rank them. Why? Who knows? But before we get into it, if you are a fan of watching a very tired drag queen talk about nerd shit forever, I ask that you please pirate an entire collection of hentai, and when your roommate walks in on you and asks what you're doing, give them the only correct response by going ahead and unzipping your pants and dick slapping those like and subscribe buttons as hard as you can. Also, if you could do me a massive favor and also dick slap that notification bell as well, that would really help me out. The YouTube algorithm hasn't exactly been kind to me lately, unless I'm talking about right-wing grifters, and apparently I'm not even showing up in people's subscriptions feeds, so please do me a massive favor and give a big ol' hearty dick slap to that notification bell. That would really help a bitch out. Now, as the title suggests, I ranked every movie and TV show found on his hard drive. I was originally going to rank the games as well, but I had only played a couple of them that were on the list, and a lot of them are only playable with certain emulators, which sadly I do not have access to at this time. So I felt that it wouldn't be fair for me to rank a bunch of games that I had never actually played. But never fear, before we get into the rankings, we will of course be taking a look at his extensive game collection. This is my channel after all. Since he allegedly had a Steam account, I of course used my trusty woke content detector to determine if Osama bin Laden's game collection was, in fact, too woke. A lot of them were old DS and other Nintendo games back from the good old days before all this DEI nonsense. Street Fighter 2 and 4 were also both found on the hard drive. Super reassuring, because I know those games have gotten crazy woke in recent years, what with their body type selections. Both Counter-Strike and Half-Life are listed as recommended and contain no woke content whatsoever. I don't have to explain how funny it is that Counter-Strike was on there. They also discovered a number of Naruto, Bleach, and Dragon Ball Z games, so clearly there's a pretty big Japanese influence here as well. But my absolute favorite entry on this list was none other than the true GOAT, Final Fantasy VII, which, when we looked at it in my other video, was flagged as just informational. As we'll see later, Final Fantasy VII was a pretty big deal in this household. It's very possible that he identified with Cloud Strife and all of his friends in that eco-terror- oh. Anyways, 7 Rebirth slapped, and I'm glad he missed out on it. Also discovered in this treasure trove of a hard drive was a number of old school dating sims and hentai games. They're withholding the names of these games from the general public for copyright reasons.
Sure, Dan.
Listen, we all know he hated the United States, but as far as we know, he didn't say anything about Japan. So, anyway, let's see if his taste in movies and TV is as impeccable as his taste in games. Alright, it looks like we're kicking this list off with Chicken Little. Not a super strong start, I'll say that much. As a great man once said, Chicken Little is dumb, and he's a coward, and that man is not a coward. It's a retelling of the classic story of a whiny little bitch boy spreading conspiracy theories that the sky is falling. And the most unrealistic aspect of that movie, in my opinion, is that nobody believes any of them, and it currently holds a 37% on Rotten Tomatoes. Not the worst movie in this list, but still a pretty mid choice in my opinion, so I'll give this a C. Next up, The Three Musketeers. Now, it wasn't actually specified as to which Three Musketeers was found, but I'm assuming it was either the 1973 version with Oliver Reed or the 1993 version with Charlie Sheen. The 1973 version was kind of a banger. The Disney version was super forgettable. I think I saw it like once as a child and then never thought about it ever again. But since I don't really have any strong feelings about either one, I think that evens out to a B. Here's the first of several documentaries that were found, and this one is a classic. BBC's Greatest Wildlife Moments, narrated by the absolutely goated David Attenborough. It's basically a best of compilation of 50 years of wildlife documentaries that the BBC made, and David Attenborough is like just the voice of natural history in this current era. No matter how divided we become as a species, we're always able to somehow unite over our collective appreciation for the Earth's beauty. Seeing this entry didn't make me lose my shit, but you definitely won't hear any complaints coming from me, so I'll give this an A. Continuing on with this solid documentary collection, we've got National Geographic's Kung Fu Killers. This is the first of a few Nat Geo docs, and this is an old school one from 1974. It follows Australian stuntman Grant Page as he examines the growing popularity of martial arts films at the time. If you have any interest in martial arts films, definitely give this one a watch. It's actually pretty interesting. And for that reason, I'll give it an A, because why not? Next up, we've got Bleach, the first of several anime entries on this list. Like I said, someone in this house was a big anime nerd, and they also found a number of Bleach video games on the hard drive as well. I personally haven't watched enough Bleach to really form a solid opinion on it, but I like what I've seen so far, and I'd probably give it a watch if I didn't cancel my Crunchyroll subscription, because I won't give those people another dime. So I will also give this entry an A. Looks like we're off to a pretty good start here. So next we've got Mysteries of Egypt, which is a short documentary from 1998 about the mysteries of Egypt, mainly about the discovery of King Tut's tomb in the year of our Lord 1922. Now, when this movie was originally released, it was specifically designed for IMAX, which is pretty extra for a 38-minute documentary, in my opinion. But since this was found on a shared computer, I'm guessing he wasn't viewing it the way that it was meant to be experienced, so a lot of that magic probably wasn't there. So I'm gonna give it a B for that reason. Next up, Batman Gotham Knight. This is a 6-part anthology film that was originally animated in Japan, and it has such a cool blend of both anime and Western animation. Kevin Conroy reprises his his part as Batman for all 6 episodes. I'm a huge Batman fan, and I had never actually heard of this before doing research for this video, so I'm really glad I was introduced to it. Banger entry here that gets a solid A. As I mentioned earlier, a certain someone was a big Final Fantasy VII fan, and not only did they have the original game, they also had this next entry, which was part of what made me want to make this video in the first place. Final Fantasy VII Advent Children. Jesus Christ on a tiny bike. This movie is bizarre. Not bad necessarily, like it's technically well made and visually it's amazing, especially for the year that it came out, but it's also genuinely incomprehensible to those who had never played the original game. And that's what makes the inclusion of Advent Children here so special to me. This movie isn't just for people who played the original game. It's for people who are big-time nerds over it. Advent Children is by no means an S-tier film, but the fact that it's there is why I'm giving it an S rank. I stand by that decision. Come at me, woke moralists. Moving on, we've got another Nat Geo documentary. This one is called World's Worst Venom. Personally, I thought that title belonged to The Last Dance. But in this particular context, it's talking about scorpions and snakes and shit. Man, I loved this kind of stuff when I was 10. I loved a lot of all of this stuff when I was 10. Again, I know these probably belong to his kids, but I just want to believe. But this is another entry that I don't particularly have strong feelings about, so I will give this one a B. Next up, one of the most overrated movies in the Disney universe, Cars. Do I think it was a bad movie? Not at all. But holy shit, this might be the only Disney movie that's more overrated than Frozen, and that's really saying something. Listen, say what you want about Frozen, but at least it wasn't a gateway drug to a movie starring Larry the Cable Guy. What if Cars had feelings? What if they did? Anyway, this gets a B. I just realized I spent the other night trying to bedazzle this hat, and I can't even see bedazzling, so can you still see? Can you see the bedazzling even now? I don't know. I suffer. Alright, we have got yet another super mid entry into the kids films category. Ice Age: Dawn of the Dinosaurs, the 3rd entry in the Ice Age extended universe, because that is apparently a thing. I do have to wonder though, did he also have Ice Age 1 and 2 on hand? Because it's concerning that he potentially went into Ice Age 3 without having seen the events of the first 2 films, which could definitely cause some confusion. I don't know, I saw the first one like once when it first came out in theaters, and now on movie number 5 they're like in space or something. To each his own, I guess. I'll give this one a C. Next up, we've got Storm Rider: Clash of the Evils, an animated Chinese film that I had never even heard of prior to doing research for this. It looked like it was cool, so I checked out the trailer. Do you guys like drinking games? Take a shot every time they say Kirin.
The only ones in the world with Kirin blood.
But I thought that Fire Kirin no longer exists in this world.
You need the Kirin blood.
Where will I find this Kirin blood?
The Kirin beast.
So there is someone alive with Kirin blood.
Yeah, I don't know. I personally wasn't super impressed. It looks like his taste in anime was, I don't want the other waves to come after me for this, so I'm gonna give this one a C. My point still stands on his taste in the art form, but I nearly fell out of my goddamn chair when I found out that this hard drive contained none other than the Devil May Cry anime from 2007. All 12 episodes, too. It's still unknown if he owned these games as well. I didn't see them on the list, and it would certainly be a departure from the collection of Metroidvanias and turn-based combat. As you guys may know, I am a huge DMC fan, and the anime was mid. But similar to Advent Children, this is another example of the work itself not being S tier by any stretch of the imagination. It's just the fact that it's there, and how hard I laughed at its discovery. This might be the only context in which this anime would earn an S ranking. Either way, I'm renewing my Netflix subscription for the new one that's coming out next year. Alright, next up we got another anime entry with some good old Dragon Ball Z. There were also a number of DBZ games found on the hard drive as well, and I have a feeling that this entry for sure belonged to his kids, because Dragon Ball Z is one of those things where like you just kind of have to grow up with it, you know? Not that you can't appreciate it as an adult, but it's easier to if you grew up with it. Does that make sense? Please don't take this as me throwing shade at DBZ. I just don't have the emotional attachment to it that a lot of other people do. I'm giving this entry a B. Please don't send me death threats over this. The next entry is something that I grew up with, and it looks like British kids shows were a pretty big staple in this household because there was a sizable amount of Wallace and Gromit episodes were covered on this hard drive. The reason I'm like this is because I grew up on British TV. Why else would my sense of humor be drier than Ben Shapiro's wife's P-word? I don't know, Wallace and Gromit and all of these other claymated shows are so timeless to me. Apparently this show is also getting a revival in the near future. Gromit is actually so cute that even one of the worst people on the planet couldn't resist this little mouthless treasure, so I'm giving this one an A. Next up, we've got a biography on the weeb himself. I don't know, sis. A little, on the nose, don't you think? This isn't the only documentary about himself that was found on there. I mean, listen, have I sometimes looked myself up on Reddit to see what people say about me? Yeah, I will admit that. But do you see me looking up fanfics about myself? Obviously not. Not very demure of you, girl. I'm gonna give this one a C. We're getting back into the nerddom with the discovery of the Resident Evil movies in this absolute goldmine. Now, similar to the Three Musketeers movie, they did not specify which of the Res Evil movies were found, but if you haven't seen them, they are so ass, truly. Like, Borderlands movie aside, we've become so spoiled with good video game adaptations lately, like Fallout and The Last of Us, but the Res Evil movies are truly representative of how far we've come, because historically, all video game adaptations were terrible. While I do appreciate this progress, these movies are so bad, so I'm giving this entry a C. Here's another Nat Geo documentary. This one's called Predators at War. Or, as I like to call it, White House Infighting. This is another nature documentary that follows the top 5 apex predators of Africa. Well, he definitely did seem like the kind of dude to love watching lion feeding or snakes swallowing people whole. I don't know. I don't really have a strong opinion on it either way, so I'll give this one a B. Next up, we've got more British TV that I grew up with, the one and only Mr. Bean. God, this guy brought me so much joy as a deeply weird child. Absolutely tragic that there are only 15 episodes of this show. If you're not familiar with this show, part of the beauty of it was that it was accessible to people who couldn't speak English because Rowan Atkinson's physical comedy spoke louder than the words his character could not speak. So I can definitely see why it would appeal to a household of people who probably spoke little to no English. Another example of British TV uniting the world. I'm giving this one a high A. Next up, another anime entry that I'm praying people don't send me death threats over. We of course have our boy Naruto, which accompanied several games with the titular character as well. Now, I loved this show when I was 12. Yeah, it's one of those animes that you just, I don't know, wish was better. It definitely fits the tastes of someone who's also into DBZ and Bleach, but it won't stop me from saying that this guy's taste in anime was pretty basic. No Cowboy Bebop, Trigun, Death Note, these are all pre-2011, you know. Oh well, I'm giving this one a B. Please don't kill me. First Disney entry we've had in a while, and boy is it underwhelming, to say the least. Home on the Range. Really, out of all the Disney movies out there, it reminds me of how I recently, I can't even talk about this without laughing. It reminds me of how I recently learned that George H.W. Bush's favorite movie of all time was, I'm not kidding, Viva Zapato. You know, the one with Marlon Brando and Brownface? Like, out of all the movies that dude was in, that's the one you're rolling with. Okay. Work. Oh, in case you're wondering, George W. Bush's favorite movie was Field of Dreams. I don't know why that makes so much sense. Anyway, Home on the Range is a very bad film and stars notorious frenemy of the Coke Francis extended universe, Roseanne Barr.
This is where we're at. Continue.
She's not the reason it's bad, but come on. Like, out of all the Disney... Okay, fine. This is our first D-list entry. Ridiculous. Maybe this just wasn't really a Disney household, because next up on our list is Ants. There's so much lore surrounding this movie, and the fact that it was basically Jeffrey Katzenberg's big middle finger to Disney after his public feud with Michael Eisner. This movie was weird. Not bad, but definitely weird, especially for a kid's movie. And it's definitely a DreamWorks production. Personally, I will take Dave Foley as the leading character over Woody Allen any day for many, many reasons. Anyway, this one gets a B, I guess. Here is our final entry in the British television category. It's Shaun the Sheep. The show came out after my childhood, so I missed the boat on this one, and I therefore don't have any emotional attachment to it. But it looks really cute. I'm glad to see that claymation isn't a dying art form. I'm sure the kids and this video's titular character were big fans. It ran for 6 seasons. That's nothing to sneeze at. Would that be 6 sneezins? I think I forgot to take my Vyvanse when I wrote this script. Anyway, I'm giving this one a B, but if it's an A grade show, please just let me know in the comments. Finally, spicing things up with some superhero content, we've got Next Avengers: Heroes of Tomorrow. This movie is about the Avengers kids getting to be soups too, so I can see how that would appeal to the young folk. But it's just another example of, like, out of all the Avengers movies you could have picked, even the ones made by 2011, this is the one you picked? Maybe. Just maybe. Our main man has terrible taste in superhero movies. Whatever. This gets a C. Next up, we've got an absolute legend here, folks. It's the one and only Tom and Jerry. Now, this show shaped my childhood. Man, I wanted to be cool like Tom when I grew up, because even though he lost every battle, he still somehow had overflowing riz.
What's that? Howdy, bitch.
According to the full list of disclosed materials on the CIA website, this hard drive contained 138 episodes of Tom and Jerry. Can we just talk about how many 138 is? The sheer amount plus the content itself, I gotta give this an S. Color me impressed. We're coming up on our last couple here. Both these choices are bordering on self-congratulatory, to say the least. We've got the CNN documentary In the Footsteps of Bin Laden. This one was supposedly well received by critics, but again, girl, little on the nose, don't you think? Normally I might put this in the B pile, maybe even the A pile, but there's just no subtlety with this guy. So unfortunately, I'm gonna have to give this one a C. Maybe that'll teach him a lesson. Here we are, gang, our final entry in this impressive collection of media found on this guy's hard drive. And boy, is it a doozy. I don't want to be too disrespectful to Morgan Spurlock because the guy just passed away recently, but boy, does he make it hard not to be. After achieving massive success with Super Size Me, where he blamed McDonald's for all of the symptoms of his chronic alcoholism, Spurlock decided to take a self-indulgent romp through the Middle East and pretend to look for the whereabouts of Osama bin Laden, while conveniently scheduling the birth of his child around the trip as he made the entire movie about himself. I'm not sure if our titular character was laughing his ass off at this corny-ass white man acting a fool in the desert, or if he was furious that his name was even attached to this mess. So our final entry here is also our final D-lister. Well, there you have it. This was an idea I had, and just look where we are now. Before we wrap this up, I want to make it abundantly clear that by making this video and making jokes about all of the arguably silly things found on Osama bin Laden's hard drive, I am in no way trying to make light of anything related to this, and that includes both the direct victims and their families from that fateful day in 2001, and especially the insane amount of post-Patriot Act Islamophobia that permeated the nation and then never left. If anything, it got worse. I wish I didn't have to clarify this, but when I make jokes about the darker aspects of our lives and culture, it's never my intention to punch down, and my motto is to always make sure that the victim is never the butt of the joke, which I'm hoping was the case today. I know the majority of you are super cool, and you already know that, but sometimes I'll take a stroll through my comment section and start to feel like comprehension and sarcasm and nuance are getting harder to come by these days. Anyway, just wanted to throw that out there. Usually my comments are super cool, and that's why some of them are the winners of the last video. Jeremy Anderson Boise says, and here I was thinking of Margaret H. Hamilton, the electronics and software engineer on the Apollo NASA missions who literally coined the term software engineering. This is what it's like to be straight. Groovy6081 says, this video single-handedly saved me from losing my mind as I am helping my family get ready for our family Christmas party. Stirring candied orange peels while listening to you talk about whatever you want is an experience. That means everything to me. And finally, Simru Phoenix says, it was the steppiest of times. It was the mommiest of times. You too can be featured in the next video. Leave a comment below. I will pick my favorite ones and give you a shout out next time. If you would like to guarantee your name be featured at the end of every video, please consider joining my Patreon. If you join any of the membership tiers that are conveniently named after Fallout protagonists, your name will be featured at the end of every video. You might also get other cool stuff like access to my Discord, behind the scenes content on how I make my wigs, ad-free and uncensored versions of my videos. So if you love my content and my drag, you can support this channel directly by clicking the link to my Patreon in the description box. If you would like to see me simp for my favorite game characters and get visibly frustrated in real time, please follow me on Twitch. I stream most Saturday afternoons Pacific Standard Time, and I am still raising money for the Palestinian Children's Relief Fund. If you want to see even more of my clown mug elsewhere, please consider following me on Instagram or TikTok. My handle for all of the above is @QueenCokeFrancis. If you enjoyed this video and you haven't done so already, please pirate an entire collection of hentai, and when your roommate walks in on you and asks what you're doing, give them the only correct response by going ahead and unzipping your pants and dick slapping those like and subscribe and notification buttons as hard as you can. Thank you to all my patrons and subscribers who have helped my channel grow and thrive the way that it has been. And of course, as always, until next time. Okay, wait, so apparently George H.W. Bush loved Viva Zapato so much that he named his oil company after it. The Zapato Corporation is named after the movie. Wait, it's John McCain's favorite movie too? What is happening?
I'm gonna be honest, I think it's very weird and it's becoming almost morbid that like nothing mainstream is actually reflecting the time.
Where did all the art go? I feel like over the past 2 months, I've rarely seen art.
How can you be an artist and not reflect the times? That to me is the definition of an artist.
In today's world of bulk Insta content and temporary TikTok noises getting beat into your head.
Child. Anyway, so
very demure, very mindful.
And memes to pacify the masses. Art seems to have distanced itself from reflecting the many pressing issues that are present in today's society. Understanding this shift is very important because art has historically been a powerful driver of societal critique and reflection.
I choose to reflect the times and the situations in which I find myself.
It has shaped our public consciousness, our capacity for understanding the world around us.
That to me is my duty.
Hello friends, welcome to my channel. My name is Deja. I've got some delicious Victorian Earl Grey, and today we're going to be sipping tea and diving into why art no longer mirrors our world the way that it once did. If you're new here, welcome. Recently I've been expanding from just creating roller skating content, though we still do that too. But when my brother died, it became really hard for me to just post within a predefined box of what I was supposed to be or what I had already been posting. So I started making content that shared my grief and eventually my learnings from books, my experiences with being stalked, offering social critiques and calls to action to try and get people more civically engaged with the world around them, specifically in their local community. And I knew that when I started posting on socials back in 2021 that I didn't want to just be roller skating. So if you've come here from my Instagram, chances are you know that my name was Deja Does It. And I did that very intentionally. I chose Deja Does It because I wanted to be free to do all of the things, which is why I didn't choose something like Deja Skates or Roller Skating with Deja. I know myself and I know that I'm a multifaceted individual, and there would come a time when I would want to expand on that and I didn't want to be locked down. I was never going to be just one thing. But something that immediately jumped out to me when I started expanding what I was posting about was that not everybody was happy about it. No. And I get it. You know, we follow people for very specific reasons, but we rarely ask ourselves, what is the consequence of that? I had spent years and countless hours of my life building up an audience only to be told that I have to use my platform in this very specific pleasure-inducing way and this way only and nothing else. And I took that personally. But more so than taking it personally, this line of thinking inspired me. It made me curious. I wanted to understand where these ideas that artists and creators have to be brands and not dynamic people who learn and grow and change. And when did we stop allowing people and their art to unfold and reflect the world around them?
The fact that like nothing at the forefront is reflecting what's actually happening in the world is blowing my mind.
So, grab your tea and chill out with me while I yap to you about how modern art forms, music, film, theater, TV, painting, sculptures, all that fun stuff, are often failing to reflect reality compared to the art of our past. This failing is primarily due to commercialization, consumerism, censorship, and the fragmentation of audiences into echo chambers and silos in this digital age. And not necessarily how we can solve this, because I'm not sure it's a solvable problem, but what we might want to be paying attention to instead. While you're here, I ask you to share your thoughts, dear watcher. Is art dead? And if so, who killed her? And for the hope of all of us, like Frankenstein's monster, can she be revived? Part 1. What art is and what it used to look like. We can't fully understand where we are today without understanding what art is and where we come from. Art is defined as a diverse range of human activities that express creativity, technical skill, and imaginative ideas through various forms such as visual arts, performing arts, literary arts, and media art. It serves multiple purposes, reflecting and critiquing social realities, evoking deep emotional and intellectual engagement, preserving and celebrating cultural heritage, providing personal fulfillment and therapeutic value, and offering entertainment and aesthetic pleasure. Also, like, look at my Vincent van Gogh. Look at my Vincent van Gogh teacup. Like, she's beautiful. Art holds a mirror to society. It challenges norms. It inspires change through shared experiences and emotions. And since the beginning, art has always been a reflection of the life and times that it was created. The Enlightenment period. In the Western world, the 17th and 18th century, there was a surge in intellectual and philosophical activity that emphasized reason, science, and individualism. Thinkers like John Locke, Phyllis Wheatley, and Rousseau challenged traditional power structures and advanced political and societal norms. Art reflecting this era includes Jacques-Louis David's The Death of Socrates, which embodies Enlightenment values. These values: reason, sacrifice for truth, questioning authority. Wheatley was an enslaved African whose art manifested through poetry. Her book, Poems on Various Subjects, Religious and Moral, was one of the first pieces of literature that showcased the intellectual prowess of someone who was enslaved. Her works explored themes of freedom, mortality, morality, and the human condition. It critiqued the institution of slavery and advocated for social and political reforms, thereby humanizing the enslaved and enriching the American literature. The Industrial Revolution. The rapid industrialization and urbanization of this period led to significant social and economic changes. Art highlighted issues like labor rights, working conditions, and economic inequality. All of these things became political. This is the rise of movements like socialism and trade unionism. We can see these things reflected in art, like Emile Zola's novel Germinal, which depicts the harsh conditions of coal miners and the struggles of the working class. This novel brought attention to the brutal realities of industrial labor and the exploitation that was being faced by workers. You okay, Tober? He's fine. This novel was able to influence public opinion and raise awareness for much needed labor reforms. It's one of the pieces of literature that was credited with the push for improved working conditions, for fair wages, for workers' rights. At the same time, Frederick Douglass, an escaped slave who was also an eloquent orator, used his powerful autobiographies and speeches to highlight the atrocities of slavery and advocate further for abolition and human rights. Not just human, but equal rights. The narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass, I think I actually have it here. It's around here somewhere. Huh, I do have it. Yeah. Excuse me. Okay. This is the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass. If you have not read this, highly recommend. But it became one of the most important texts in the fight against slavery and social justice. These contributions in art showed that there was a universal desire for justice and human dignity. It didn't matter what color you were. These things were resonating across racial and social divides, which I think is really important. Few things could reach people more than the art of the time could. The Progressive Era. October. In response to the excesses of industrial capitalism, the Progressive Era in the United States and similar movements elsewhere saw activists and reformers being conscious or woke to the societal impact of industrialization, and advocating for reforms became a political stance. Artwork reflecting this era includes Upton Sinclair's The Jungle, which exposed yet again the brutal conditions in the meatpacking industry. This book lit a fire of public demand for regulation reform. At this same time, we were blessed with the Harlem Renaissance. There was a cultural, social, and artistic explosion of expression centered in Harlem, New York. Black artists, writers, musicians, painters were seeking to redefine the African American experience. Billie Holiday sang of strange fruit. Langston Hughes wrote poetry like The Negro Speaks of Rivers, and Zora Neale Hurston's novel, Their Eyes Were Watching God, captured the complexities of Black life and culture. It challenged racist stereotypes and advocated for racial pride and equality. The counterculture movement. The counterculture movement in the 1960s continued to challenge mainstream values, and now is when we start to see an increase of political and social themes being integrated into mainstream music, film, theater, and TV shows. This mainstream increase of visibility gave birth to consciousness on a much wider scale that fought against the brutality and the cruelty of the time. Art forms of this era consisted of musicals like Hair, which celebrated peace, love, and protested against the war in Vietnam, Twilight Zone, which was brought to life by creator Rod Serling after the death of Emmett Till. The brutality of Emmett's murder inspired him to want to create a television show that was going to allow him to offer social critiques in an unassuming format. And this is at a time when it was incredibly dangerous, incredibly risky to do so. Artists like Bob Dylan, the Beatles, Jimi Hendrix, Marvin Gaye, Nina Simone.
The situation in which I find myself, that to me is very beautiful. In our lives, everything is so desperate.
Played pivotal roles in the musical revolution. They embodied the spirit of the era and inspired countless individuals to join in on the fight for civil rights and social justice. The art reflected what was going on outside. It didn't stop at music or TV shows. Visual artists like Peter Max and the San Francisco poster art scene used vibrant psychedelic designs to symbolize the movement's ideals of peace, love, and resistance. Black visual artists like Faith Ringgold created powerful work that addressed race and social justice. Literature from the Beat generation with writers like Jack Kerouac, Allen Ginsberg, James Baldwin. Please check out his The Fire next time. These things not only captured but heavily influenced the counterculture at the time. When you look at movies like Woodstock, it's also very easy to kind of see how well the art in this era documented freedom, critiques, pain, constant unrest. Censorship was alive and well, but mass culture had not found its footing just yet. The rise of mass culture and the decline of dissent. The 1970s marked a significant shift in the role of art as a political driving force of change, with a divergence from counterculture to mass culture. Mass culture, defined as a set of ideas, practices, goods, and entertainment produced and disseminated on a large scale, mainly through mass media such as television, radio, film, and the internet, has played a dual role in both spreading and stifling dissent. While political issues were still addressed in the 1970s, the approach became more mainstream and marketable. The commercialization of music meant that the radical edge of earlier decades had become watered down and diluted to be more appealing to the masses. This period is where we truly start to witness the beginning of art's transformation into a commodity, where its power to drive change is now intertwined with its ability to be marketed and consumed. Side note, this makes me think about the uproar that had happened a couple months back. An AI image circulated social media. It said all eyes on Rafa. And a lot of people were extraordinarily upset because they felt like this art form sanitized the reality, which in hindsight makes a lot of sense, because up until that point, a lot of people had not shared. Well, a lot of people had shared their support for Gaza and the war against the Palestinian people, but a lot of people were also afraid and hadn't done so up until that point. So when this extremely marketable image came out, that's when we saw insane viral sharing. I think this picture was shared maybe 50 million times in the span of 48 hours, which I don't have any data on this. I feel like that might be the most widely shared piece of art or content related to the war on Palestinian people. It caused frustration on two sides, because the thing that people wanted the most was to get the word out, but society showed us that it had to be easily consumable and bite-sized in order for them to feel comfortable enough sharing it. Back to it. Visually at this time, we start to see the emergence of graffiti and street art as forms of political expression. We have artists like Jean-Michel Basquiat using their work to address themes of race, identity, social inequality. The feminist art movement also gained momentum at this time. We have artists like Judy Chicago and the Guerrilla Girls challenging gender norms and advocating for women's rights through the use of provocative and politically charged work. Artists like Betty Sars used mixed media assemblage to create works that beautifully explored themes of Black spirituality, African American culture, the African American experience through works like The Liberation of Aunt Jemima. Films and TV shows in the 1970s also began to address political and social issues more directly. However, as mainstream media became more commercialized, content that critiqued the status quo or addressed uncomfortable truths was sidelined in favor of more profitable, palatable entertainment. During the 1980s and the 1990s, mass culture continued on. In this decade, we start to see much more commercialization of art and entertainment. One really solid example is going to be MTV. MTV revolutionized the music industry and heavily influenced pop culture.
America, see the music you want to see.
I want my MTV.
Became one of the largest platforms for an artist to reach an audience, but with it also imposed certain restrictions. The channel had a focus on promoting visually appealing and commercially viable music videos, and this often overshadowed work that might have more political or societal messaging.
I'd like to ask you something. All right. It occurred to me, having watched MTV over the last few months, that it's a solid enterprise and it's got a lot going for it. I'm just floored by the fact that there's so few black artists featured on it. Why is that?
For example, while Michael Jackson and Madonna achieved massive success with their visually captivating videos, musicians with politically charged content like NWA and The Clash found it a little bit more challenging to gain widespread exposure.
We want to play artists that seem to be doing music that fits into what we want to play for MTV. The company is thinking in terms of narrow casting.
So this is eventually the beginning of, if artists wanted to address certain issues or more pressing issues, then they were going to have to go up against the commercially successful behemoths that were dominating the airwaves and MTV's programming.
There seem to be a lot of black artists making very good videos that I'm surprised aren't used on MTV.
Well, of course, also we have to try and do what we think not only New York and Los Angeles will appreciate, but also Poughkeepsie or Midwest. Pick some town in the Midwest that will be scared to death by Prince, which we're playing, or a string of other black faces.
That's
and black
very
music.
Interesting. Isn't that interesting?
You know, we have to play the music that we think an entire country is going to like.
Now, on a broader cultural perspective is when we start to see the prioritization of entertainment over commentary above everything else. Around this same time, we start to see the introduction of cable TV, which significantly changed the media landscape. The emergence of the 24-hour news cycle and networks like CNN revolutionized how news was consumed, emphasizing real-time reporting, infotainment, and sensationalism over in-depth analysis. Because this drop-off in analysis, we're starting to see a decline in investigative journalism. This one is big because investigative journalism had previously played a pretty important role in setting up accountability measures for, power. Author Chris Hedges helps us understand why the shift towards commercialization and censorship was worthy of paying attention to. Art gives people a language by which they can understand themselves and their society, and the corporate power structure was determined to make sure artists spoke in a language that did not threaten their entitlement. The deregulation of the media industry, particularly under the Reagan administration.
Another vital part of this strategy concerns government regulation.
It's funny how so many things lead back to Reagan. Those deregulations led to the creation of media conglomerates, and it allowed these monopolies to create increased corporate control over the news and entertainment content.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and
False news has become all too common on social media.
Some media
without checking facts first. Unfortunately, some members of the media believe their facts to their own personal bias and agenda control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This shift fully prioritized profit and ratings over critical reality-based content, reality-reflecting content. The Telecommunications Act of 1996 further accelerated this trend, homogenized content that avoided controversial topics just to appease advertisers. In Hollywood, the focus shifted towards blockbuster movies and mainstream entertainment, with movies like Back to the Future and Top Gun capturing the spirit, the white spirit of the 1980s, but lacking in any deep social or political commentary. We realized that the blockbuster franchise has been born, and it's brought along with it guaranteed box office success, rather than films that are critically engaged with contemporary issues. Again, we have profitability over thought-provoking content. And with this, we relegate dissenting voices to the fringes of society and independent film. At this time, we're starting to figure out a pattern, so music has become more formulaic or more formula-driven. The formula-based music of the 80s walked so that Chainsmokers and Imagine Dragons could run. So these formulas were making sure to cater to mainstream tastes. The good news is that despite this, alternative avenues for political and social discourse remain. You have independent and underground artists, filmmakers, musicians, especially in areas like punk, grunge, rock, hip-hop. So we're thinking Tupac.
Everywhere, big business. You want to be successful? You want to be like Trump? Gimme, gimme, gimme. Push, 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 push. Step, step, step. Crush, crush, crush. That's how it all is.
Zappa.
Well, our families are under attack from people like you with these lyrics.
John, you don't have to buy them.
Mr. Zappa,
Can I make a statement about national defense?
Yeah.
The biggest threat to America today is not communism. It's moving America toward a fascist theocracy. And everything that's happened during the Reagan administration is steering us right down that pipe.
Public Enemy.
Young people, perception is everything. You have to study Nazi propaganda to understand what's going on with the transmission of media images. You have to know the fact of advertising and subliminal seduction. It ain't nothing new. You have to understand there's a guy called Noam Chomsky that influenced me to make Don't Believe the Hype. You got to understand, when they have a revolution in a country everywhere around the world, what's the first place they can attack? They take over the television station and the radio station.
Rage Against the Machine, music that had been pushed to the fringes outside of the mainstream, not coincidentally the music that would continuously critique the system or continuously produce art that reflected reality, not the dream of mainstream media. They continued to address issues like equality, racism, censorship, political corruption. These are not popular topics, and their movements, despite censoring, still had long-term impact on social awareness. The birth of the internet transformed the media landscape even further than it had ever gone before. Digital media created new opportunities for independent voices, but also has led to audience fragmentation. Your audience is now so split up, whereas before, mass culture, mass entertainment, everyone is listening. Now we're fragmented into silos and echo chambers. On top of that, recently on the internet, we've seen a prioritization of sensationalism or rage bait specific, emotionally charged content taking the place of nuance or critical discussions of reality. Part 3: Suppression of art in the wild. It's no secret that companies often adopt a stance of risk aversion to protect their brand image and their customer base, distancing themselves from artists and athletes who take political stances that could be polarizing. Economic interests drive corporations to prioritize profitability. That means avoiding controversial topics or controversial people to avoid boycotts or any form of negative publicity that could impact sales. This is great for business, but it leaves politically active individuals unsupported. Content control by brands and media platforms ensures that there's a sanitized image, promoting non-controversial entertainment and steering clear of politically charged topics. Something I've found interesting lately is the general public we're aware of things like media training. So we see someone who is behaving authentically, not hurting anyone.
Get off the plane, what are you doing? I want to go to the ghetto, not gonna lie. Everybody say Paris is like, it's not as bougie and fancy as it says, so I want to see the real Paris.
And I've seen so many comments that are like, this person needs media training, this person needs media training. And at one point in time, we wanted authenticity. We wanted reality. That is what we wanted, which is why we had such a huge reality TV boom in the early 2000s. And now for us to consciously be so aware that we want someone to be trained to be the exact opposite of what we so badly wanted before, that we would actually call out, this person needs media training, or someone skipped their media training. And it's almost like we ourselves have become the oppressors. So not only are there things like media training, but this also extends to blacklisting and banning artists and songs who step outside of the media trained framework that we provided for them, or that we so readily call for, like Romans in the Colosseum. This is great for brands, but for people, it effectively silences dissenting voices and it limits their reach. It chides them for engaging with their world politically or even having anything to say about it. Be happy, it screams. These same tools were used to silence artists like Paul Robeson in the 1950s, and they are still alive and well in modern times. So we're going back in time again, and by the mid-20th century, art was already a pretty powerful tool for social change. Flashing back to today, there are a lot of radical voices that have been silenced by corporate interests. You don't even have to go very far to see how economic priorities and brand image have stifled artistic freedom. Even liberal institutions, which should have supported freedom of expression, often collaborated in these suppressive actions. They blacklisted artists, teachers, writers, actors, musicians, scientists, effectively silencing their voices. For a mid-century example, we need to look no further than the greatest American you've never heard of, Paul Robeson. Okay? When I say Paul Robeson was that guy, please believe me, I'm so ashamed. I am so ashamed that I learned about Paul Robeson so late. I actually cried the first time I fell down a rabbit hole, because how had I not known about this extraordinary American? Where was he in my history book? What happened? Where was the ball dropped that I didn't know about this person? And then it hit me that was exactly the goal. That's how effective this silencing is. It wasn't an unhappy coincidence that I had little to no exposure of Paul Robeson. That was the intention. Shout out to you though, if you know about Paul Robeson before I'm about to tell you about Paul Robeson. If you knew about him before you watched this video, you're clutch. Let's be friends. Air hug. Paul Robeson was a true revolutionary Renaissance man, but he's been largely erased from U.S. film and activist history by the U.S. government. Paul Robeson rose to fame in the early 20th century. He was an African-American singer, polymath, polyglot. That means he was fluent in over 10 languages. He was an actor. He went to law school, played football. He was a 2-time All-American and a civil rights activist. Now, it's already impressive that he was all of these things, but he was impressive at a time when being black was like extra, extra hard, you know? Black is hard, but it's like extra. It was like on X Games mode then, and he was all of these things.
So I would say today that I'm an American who is infinitely prouder to be of African descent, no question about it.
Why didn't I know about him? He played Othello in the 1940s, and it became the longest running Shakespearean play on Broadway at the time. A true testament to his extraordinary talent and the fact that he used the power of art to challenge societal norms. Like, he still used his platform. He could have just put his head down and been like, you know what? Life is good for me. I'm like incredible. I'm just not even gonna rock the boat. But he was like, nah, that's not what's about to happen. Like, can you even imagine a cat who was like EGOT level, still serving face, that's like still serving civil rights and labor worker rights on the side, just like doing the damn thing. Among all of these things, he's a perfect example of how liberal institutions were complicit in suppressing art. The 1950s brought in the Red Scare and McCarthyism, and he became a prime target for the HUAC, which is the House Committee of Un-American Activities. The House Committee of Un-American Activities, which was an investigative committee that was created in 1938 to investigate alleged disloyalty activities on the parts of private citizens, public employees, and any organizations that were suspected of having any ties with communism. So basically anybody who advocated for like the rights of other people was being accused of being a communist. And they sicked a committee on you to determine if you were being un-American. It's so funny when people say that like fascism is coming to America, and I'm like, oh, read more books. Read more books. I digress. Because he openly expressed himself and he used his platform for good and to speak out and advocate for others.
Say the Africans and the American Negroes have turned out to be an extraordinarily gifted people. The great tragedy is that by not making us full-class citizens as yet in America, they may be losing, I don't know how much yet.
He's faced severe backlash. I'm talking being blacklisted from film, TV, radio. He had his passport revoked. He got denied work opportunities. Everyone was in on it. His records were removed from stores. He received a ban on his performances for nearly a decade, on top of being surveillanced by the FBI, all because he spoke out for the rights of other people. Liberal institutions, including major entertainment companies and even labor unions, complied with government pressure to distance themselves from any perceived radicals, fearing the loss of public support and financial repercussions. By giving in to the demands of these conservative forces, liberal institutions played a significant role in suppressing Robeson. And despite his significant contributions to the arts and civil rights, he was systematically erased from mainstream and cultural memory.
He must know something, but don't say nothing. He just keeps rolling. He keeps on rolling along.
For me, this silence is not only a personal tragedy, but a true loss to the cultural and political discourse of the past and the future, and the now, if we really want to go, because not enough people know about Paul Robeson. Maybe I'll be him for Halloween this year. I think maybe that's what I'll do. Side note, the HUAC failed to turn up any evidence that Hollywood was secretly disseminating communist propaganda. But that didn't change anything because the industry was nonetheless transformed. Corporate dictators like Walt Disney began to advise their production studios of what contributions to their art were not going to be acceptable. On top of that, fundraising for once popular humanitarian efforts became extremely difficult. Despite the sympathies of many in Hollywood, there was now very little open support. Modern day blacklisting and banning. I feel like there's no way we can talk about like modern day blacklisting and banning without talking about Colin Kaepernick. Colin Kaepernick was an NFL quarterback who faced severe backlash and effectively blacklisting after he began kneeling during the national anthem in 2016 to protest police brutality and racial injustice.
There are a lot of things that are going on that are unjust, people aren't being held accountable for, and that's something that needs to change.
Initially, he was allowed to play, but Kaepernick soon found himself unsigned by any NFL team after opting out of his contract in 2017. His silent, peaceful protest sparked national debate, and fuel was added to the fire by none other than figures like Donald Trump calling for players who kneeled to be fired.
They say, get that son of a bitch off the field right now. Out. He's fired. He's fired!
And the result of both public and political pressure combined contributed to his blacklisting, which led to losing his endorsements and sponsorships. Kaepernick did later gain support from companies like Nike, which embraced his activism. However, this is an exception rather than the rule. More importantly, this truly highlights how corporate branding can both silence and amplify voices depending on public sentiment and market calculations. If Nike didn't have a vested interest in keeping a particular population and their consumer dollars happy, we can almost be certain that they would not have found it advantageous to support Kaepernick through his blacklisting. But I don't know, you let me know your thoughts on that. Unfortunately for the artists formerly known as the Dixie Chicks, they didn't have the fear of losing black dollars to save them from the censorship mob. The Chicks. The Chicks, previously known as the Dixie Chicks, were those girls back in the day. Don't let anybody downplay the Dixie Chicks. These were these girls. They were the highest selling female group of all time at that time. They might still be. Somebody fact check me on that. But just to give you some some context, think about how popular Migos was around the time of like 2017 when they were like in their Bad and Bougie era, where like every 3 songs that you heard on the radio were Migos. That was the Dixie Chicks for country music. They were at the top of the charts until lead singer Natalie Maines opened her mouth and vocalized her First Amendment right by criticizing President George Bush and the war in Iraq during a concert in 2003.
Just so you know, we're on the good side with y'all. We do not want to be swore. We're ashamed of President of the United States.
It took less than a week after Maines' statement to feel the sharp pull of the censorship rug. Many country radio stations,
Personally, I hope you don't play their music again for quite a while. I think it was very disrespectful.
influenced by conservative leaders and political pressure, banned their music from being played, which greatly reduced their visibility and reach. The group received death threats.
Natalie Maines will be shot dead Sunday, July 6th.
They experienced public boycotts. Former fans recorded themselves burning their CDs, pulling their records from stores. Their corporate sponsors and partners distanced themselves, which obviously significantly impacted their income and brand partnerships. The silencing was so swift that it actually prompted hearings in the Senate.
Up to the program managers themselves. That's the crux of the problem, Mr. Dickey. A decision was made at corporate headquarters that was binding on the program managers. That's what's wrong here, Mr. Dickey. If the program managers themselves had made the decision, it's one thing. But when it comes down from corporate headquarters, then that, in my view, is an incredible act. And I was more offended, or as offended as anyone was, by the statement of the Dixie Chicks. But to restrain their trade because they exercise their right of free speech, to me, is remarkable. It is remarkable. And it's an argument. It's a strong argument about what media concentration has the possibility of doing it. Because if someone else in another format offends you and there's a huge hue and cry, and you decide to censor those people, my friend, the erosion of the First Amendment in the United States of America is in progress.
Shout out to McCain. Does anybody else miss this type? I just miss this type of leadership. I feel like I missed the boat on like true American leadership. That was fantastic. But back to the Chicks, they never returned fully to their previous level of success. But that message had been signed, sealed, and delivered loud and clear. This was not the 60s. There was no longer any room for anti-war sentiment in America. This was yet another nail in the coffin of art becoming more pacifying entertainment and less about humanistic expression. Thought rejection. What's it like finding out you've been asleep this whole time? Today, whenever art is not dripped in escapism so much to soothe the masses, we tend to see thought rejection. Thought rejection is found in art that does reflect reality. We have arrived at a point where when we are being faced with reality, or when we are consuming art that does reflect reality, we reject it to further the illusion. For example, let's look at The Boys, and we'll look at the use of the cancel culture phrase, go woke, go broke. The Boys is a television series that offers a satirical critical take on superheroes and explores themes of corruption, power, and the dark side of celebrity culture. One major point of contention in the show's 4th season is its increased political commentary, which some users are finding overly explicit and divisive. Critics have been arguing that the satire, which targets media manipulation, corporate greed, and authoritarianism, has become too heavy-handed, potentially alienating parts of his audience that feel it's trying too hard to push a woke agenda. This has led to a rejection of thoughtful engagement with its underlying messaging. Cancel culture phrase go woke, go broke has emerged as a criticism of entertainment content that incorporates social justice themes or attempts to address societal issues. Proponents of this phrase argue that when TV shows, movies, media focus on promoting diversity or inclusivity or progressive values, they alienate a significant portion of the audience, and they should ultimately suffer financially for that. They claim that by prioritizing social messages over entertainment value, these productions lose their appeal and should fail to attract viewership or revenue. The result of this type of thought rejection has two solid implications off the top of my head. First, they create a polarized environment where individuals may reject engaging with content that challenges their existing beliefs or perspectives.
Wait, is this fucking play about us?
By dismissing shows like The Boys because the reality is too sobering, some viewers may choose to avoid watching or analyzing the show's underlying social commentary. On the same vein, phrases like "go woke, go broke" discourage open-mindedness towards media that aims to address social issues, leading to a rejection of thought when it comes to exploring different perspectives or different realities. Whether you choose to acknowledge it or not, the reality is still there. Number two, these criticisms contribute to the creation of echo chambers and the perpetuation of hive mind thinking. When people only seek out and consume content that aligns with their preconceived notions, that reinforce their own beliefs, that perpetuate stereotypes, that reject alternative viewpoints, we reject thought.
Why is nobody talking about the shit that matters?
Part of the reason why art is no longer reflecting reality is evident in criticism of shows like The Boys, or even the use of phrases like "go woke, go broke." It's the dismissal of socially conscious media and art that critiques and reflects reality as it is, not as we want it to be, but as it is, and determines that this type of art is not deserving of being financially successful because it does so. So not only does this cause for us to not critically engage with concepts that are new and different to us, but it also furthers the amplification and creation of art that dulls us, that doesn't require us to think. The rejection of thought limits intellectual growth, spiritual growth. It stifles creativity. It hampers progress towards a more realistic, more inclusive, empathetic society. This bottleneck of independent thought is further exacerbated by the beast affectionately known as the algo. Part 5. The algo and self-censorship. Algorithms play a huge part in determining what content gets seen and what content gets buried. When it comes to these platforms specifically, algorithms are designed to maximize engagement and ad revenue, which means that they're often prioritizing content that is entertaining, non-controversial, and widely appealing over content that is going to be critical, thought-provoking, or politically charged. If algorithms favor sanitized content that sells lifestyles, what happens to the art that challenges our perspectives, makes us think, or portrays the raw truth? A perfect example of this is going to be the wildly popular creator Nara Smith. If you don't know Nara, you definitely should. She makes beautiful content that's centered around taking care of her young family. What makes Nara extremely fascinating to me is she uses a strategy called empty billboard in her content. This strategy allows brands to perfectly insert themselves into her content with little to no friction. The mass appeal of it has resulted in having millions of eyes on their content, millions of eyes on their products, which means millions of impressions, which translates directly to purchases. Her content definitely offers inspiration. If you watch Nara's content and you are not inspired, I don't know what is happening to you. But it also gives you a small peek into a lifestyle that is highly unattainable and highly unrealistic for the average person. If someone were to strive for the lifestyle that she portrays without understanding what goes into being able to carefully craft that level of perfection, I imagine that they would find themselves in a dark place sooner or later. That's a whole other topic entirely. So if you are ever interested or you want a video on media literacy, let your girl know. October, come on, you have to move, baby. Okay, it started storming. Where were we? Algorithms. Okay, so algorithms on these platforms map all of your interests. Once they have your interests mapped, they promote content that sells you a lifestyle and all the consumer goods that would lead you to having said lifestyle. They push makeup tutorials based upon your insecurities or the things that you're looking up, viral dance challenges. All of these things are pushed to the top of your feed. And even more so lately with the rise of things like TikTok Shop and Amazon Live, which is essentially this generation's QVC, turning your For You page into a glorified clothing rack. I actually used to work for Amazon Live, and it was very interesting how many people would buy products that they didn't even care about just to sell them to consumers. And it made me realize that most people have never really stopped to ask themselves, how do I feel about the role of algorithms shaping the content that I see online, shaping what I hear online, shaping what I purchase, shaping my ideas about myself? How much free will do I even truly have when I have been mapped and marketed to in this way? How much of my ideas are truly my own or just like the next logical line of thinking? Anyone who has a TikTok has probably thought at least more than one time, like, the algorithm probably knows you better than you know yourself. Who even are you? Self-censorship. In the creator economy, the fear of demonetization buys silence by discouraging creators from addressing controversial or sensitive topics. These platforms use algorithms to determine which content is going to be eligible for monetization, and they flag content that includes any type of political discourse or social justice issues or critiques of corporate power, anything that could be deemed not advertiser friendly. And getting flagged can lead to demonetization, which is a huge financial penalty that a lot of creators can't afford, especially now because we're kind of in like the creator economy where you have people who are professionally entertaining you, who are professionally providing you information, who are professionally providing you all of these tutorials. They're doing this for their income, so it makes sense why they would stay silent on things that could risk that. I mean, what happens is you start to see a lot of creators who avoid discussing important topics that actually reflect reality. Even though they're important, a lot of people have determined that it's not really worth their livelihood, which is very interesting because I feel like everybody wants to believe that they're like such a good person. And you think about like times of like, you know, Yahtzee Germany, and everybody wants to believe that they would like hide their neighbor, like they'd be somebody who's saving people, and in actuality they wouldn't. You would be risking your life in a situation like that. Whereas now you're not necessarily risking your life, though in some situations you are. You'd be risking your platform, and a lot of people aren't willing to even touch the possibility of losing their platform. So I mean, would you really have hidden someone? Would you have really done that? That's their livelihood. That's their status. That's their reach. But it's given birth to this segment of the creator economy that is self-censorship. And in this self-censorship bubble, non-controversial content is what is favored, is what is getting pushed repeatedly. So even if you did have a challenging viewpoint or a perspective or an idea about something, you're not going to share it. I've noticed that when I start posting more, I don't want to say controversial content because I don't really feel like politics should be controversial. Politics should be boring. It should be so boring. It should be like the DMV where we're like letting people know what they need to know to be civically engaged. But since I started posting about political things, it's brought in like a huge amount of just like very like nasty people. And I've noticed that since I started posting content like that, I had much larger creators reposting my stuff. And whereas before, you know, I was just doing roller skating, which for the most part is truly non-confrontational at all. Like I never received a negative comment for like 3 years when I was only posting skate content. It wasn't until I started posting political content or like sharing my thoughts on society that, you know, really ugly comments started to come. But I realized that because larger accounts are reposting my stuff because they could never besmirch their platform. So even though they want to, or they feel that this is important, you know, you're asking a lot of people to like risk their livelihood, which is essentially the same thing that was happening, you know, in the McCarthy era in the 50s. People are afraid to speak out. And it's almost like I'm taking the sacrifice, which is so weird to even like consider. But when you like pull the layers back, like that's exactly what it is. I can't share this, so I'm going to amplify this person who is sharing this because it doesn't really have a place on my platform in my niche. But it's wild because we're humans, and we shouldn't be like so niched down that we risk freedom of expression. That's exactly what's happening. So with that threat of demonetization, we also run the risk of homogenized content that's all kind of the same, where creators, you know, prioritize sensational or even rage bait content. So surprisingly, like rage bait content, even though it's not socially critical, is a huge money driver. Nothing motivates people more than emotion, even if it's not correct, even if it's misinformation, even if it's stereotypical or unkind, that content will be amplified because it drives engagement. So now we have like this homogenization of rage content and just mind-numbing nothing content that will, you know, engage your brain for a few hours, but you're not going to remember what you watched 2 days from now. And that content surely isn't going to impact your life or usher you into movement to get involved in, you know, knowing what's going on around you. It's nothing content. It's brain rot content. Things that drive your emotions, that drive engagement. These are the things that are allowed to be said in our world. This is the art that is allowed to be reflected without risk of financial repercussions. So not only does it rob us from having a diverse array of voices or creators who feel empowered to create art that is reflecting what's going on around them, it does something else. It robs the audience. It robs the audience of the validation of what they are experiencing in the world around them. It can be so isolating when you're suffering mentally, physically, emotionally, only to open up your phone and see everyone operating as if nothing is out of place, business as usual. But their silence has been bought and paid for. The role of the artist is not to placate, but to translate and validate the collective experience. Death of the Liberal Class does a really good job of addressing this. When the corporate media chooses to ignore serious political art, it marginalizes it. Millions of people who might see, read, hear that art don't. Their questions, ideas, feelings are not then validated by witnessing them portrayed accurately in art. Art tells many people it's okay to think and feel unpopular things. Without that assurance, people are often isolated with their own perceptions of reality and will retreat to official conformity and the comfort of patriotism, even when it betrays the ideals it's meant to support. The algorithm is where nuance goes to die. When engagement metrics favor sensational or rage bait clicky content that's designed to trigger you, these overshadow the conversations that we should be having. They also put us back into those echo chambers, and we're playing defense instead of playing offense in our society, defending ourselves against crude stereotypes, or a lot of the times bots. We're being goaded into conversation that moves us nowhere. Another aspect of this is artists themselves can suffer when their freedom of expression is stifled. I've seen firsthand what happens to creators when they're not fully able to express themselves, or they're not able to reconcile the difference between who they are online and who they are in real life. It's not good. It harms people. It hurts the audience too, because I'm sure that you can think of a time as an audience member where you became apathetic or disengaged from art or content that you started to realize was irrelevant or untruthful or just disingenuous. It started to feel inauthentic to you, performative. And you would think that with the rise of the internet, we would have more freedom to be able to express ourselves, but that's not the case. Despite artists' freedom to share their work online, that algorithmic curation heavily influences visibility. Platform dependency and shadow banning, they'll try to tell you shadow banning is not real, it's real, further suppresses content that makes you think, making it difficult for those artists to reach new audiences. How many times have you ever stumbled on somebody whose like content is fantastic? You're like, oh my God, how did I not know about this person? But their topics are not the conventional, they're not rage baity, they're not the brain rot content, and you're wondering why that person does not have a larger audience because so many people would benefit from it. You know why, baby? It's the algorithm games. So as a result of that, a lot of creators are turning to alternative platforms like Substack or Patreon. They can maintain their independence, their revenue streams, and continue producing meaningful content. The problem with these alternatives is typically you're going to have a much smaller reach, which further limits the potential impact of thought-provoking work. But y'all tell me, have you noticed content creators avoiding certain subjects or topics in order to stay monetized? How did that impact the type of content that you consume? Part 6, protecting the last bastions of art reflecting reality. Independent media. Independent media, films, streaming services, punk, metal, and especially hip-hop have emerged as the last safe havens of mainstream art that is allowed to reflect reality. When you look at Kendrick Lamar or Tupac and how they have been able to use their music to provide commentary on racial injustice in modern day America, they've been allowed to communicate their perspective and engage in reality in a way that not many other genres are able to. Outside of Tyler Childers, we probably won't find too many country music artists speaking on behalf of the downtrodden. But, you know, I could be wrong. Let me know if y'all know of some country music artists who have social critiquing or political commentary. Drop it. I'm more than willing to learn and be wrong and, you know, send some streams in the way of anybody who uses their voice to amplify those who might not be able to use their voices or to critique systems. But another bastion in addition to music is going to be streaming services, which allows independent movies and films to be played on a wider scale. Take, for example, the films They Clone Tyrone or Parasite. These are independent or international films that provide fresh and alternative perspectives that we wouldn't normally be seeing in mainstream cinema. By embracing independent platforms or independent production companies, audiences have a lot more freedom to explore diverse narratives and gain a deeper understanding of the world around them. So you got to go off grid. Maybe through supply and demand, it'll be brought to the forefront that this is actually something that people want to see. We want things outside of the mainstream. An additional layer to that is going to be independent journalism. So platforms like Substack have become so much more important in protecting the last bastions of art that actually reflects reality, especially during a time where traditional media is becoming much more centralized or much more influenced by various interests. Independent journalism serves as that crucial counterbalance that we're not able to see on mainstream platforms like CNN or Fox. All of these things promote a more authentic and realistic representation of reality, which is what we want. We want to see reality as it is, not as we want it to be or not as we want to pretend it to be, as it is. Because it's only when we recognize things or view things for what they are can we make impactful change. Can we determine if we like something or if we don't like something and what we can do about it. This can't happen if we're pretending. So recently, when your girl was told a variation of shut up and skate, as soon as I started making content that wasn't centered around roller skating, it would have helped me to hear this, and I don't know who needs to hear it, but I'm gonna say it for you too. You are more than your hobby. You are more than your job. You are more than your status. You are allowed to be a fully dynamic human being that is a part of the wider collective consciousness. Full stop. You are not a brand, you are a person. When art is not allowed to reflect reality, deep, deep problems are born. And they're born because art truly does serve as a medium for expressing dissent and critiquing social issues.
Everything is so desperate. When everything is not survival. Wow. Many people right now, there's somebody saying,
when it's not allowed to reflect reality, there's a critical breakdown in the function of society. And this breakdown leads to not only just a less informed audience or a less informed population, but a less questioning population. Art that doesn't reflect reality runs the risk of becoming inauthentic and disconnected from the experiences of everyday people, which again, as we called it, can lead to that sense of alienation, especially among audiences who feel that their lives and their struggle are not being accurately portrayed on the world stage. When you're in hell and everyone around you, everyone on your feed is acting like everything is fine, gaslighting your reality, it can be incredibly isolating, and it doesn't have to be. And on the flip side, when art does engage with real life, it drives cultural and social progress, it challenges norms, introduces new ways of thinking. It serves as a historical record, especially when it's able to document the realities and the sentiment of different eras. I want you to think of Paul Robeson when you hear this. If art is not allowed to reflect reality, future generations lose valuable insights into the past. It becomes homogenized, it becomes monolithic. Blind spots are created from the lack of diversity and depth. This gives us a cultural landscape that is less rich, less varied, that perpetuates social inequalities all around us. We are not rugged individualists. We are a society. We are a community made up of various strengths, and we can only tap into those strengths when everyone has a seat at the table. All of this to say, between Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, I have over 1,000 roller skate videos. If you want my roller skating stuff, it's there. Go watch that. And there's more than enough to go around. Go watch that. Check out my roller skating course if you're feeling extra nostalgic and you want to support a girl. But please understand that when art is not allowed to reflect reality, a critical function is removed.
So I don't think you have a choice. How can you be an artist and not reflect the times? That to me is the definition of an artist.
Okay, Deja, what do I do with all of this information that we just yapped about? Honestly, just focus on balance, friends. Just focus on balance. Sometimes we just need to veg out, not think for a while, hit a little brain rot. That's okay. Just don't be afraid to balance out your escapism with reality. Find harmony. You don't have to overdo it, but to go beyond is just as bad as falling short. Block at least one page of rage-baiting content so it just doesn't even come across your For You page. Check out someone's Substack. Subscribe to independent media outlets that prioritize critical thinking and diverse perspectives. Support independent artists, creators who make meaningful, reality-based work. I know that we all love like the NPCs. Oh, ice cream so yum. Share a little of that escapism with meaningful work. Your support comes in many forms: buying their artwork, attending their shows, sharing their work on social media, contributing to their crowdfunding campaigns. Just share their content, encourage others to do the same. If you have any recommendations for independent journalists, artists, book, content creators, drop them below. I would love to see them. And creators who are committed to critiquing aspects of our world that get you thinking differently, that make you more aware of the world around you. Honestly, create and share your own art. that reflects your reality, that reflects your experiences. Share your unique perspective so that you can contribute to the larger cultural landscape. I keep showing this because it's probably one of my favorite things that I've ever been told as a creator. The idea that your work could spark or validate someone else's experience is just like, oh, I'm like tearing up as I'm even thinking about it. Like, that's what I do this for, you know? That's what you do this for. So you can like give. And then finally, like, allow expansion. Allow people to grow and to be dynamic. Shout out to everybody who's been riding with me for like this nicheless journey where you don't know what you're gonna get. Honestly, you could get a post about roller skating. You could get a post about, you know, critiquing social systems. You could get a post about Project 2025. You could get anything up at this point, you know? Anything at this point. But we should be allowing and encouraging growth. If someone's talking about the same thing that they were talking about 10 years ago, and it's not something that's like impactful, you know, it's not something that's like driving change in the world and they've just been consistent, but like if they've just been like stagnant, like hashtag Drake, that's very, very different. But allowing people to expand instead of putting them inside of this little box of what they're supposed to be, I think is 100% the way to go. And so I firmly believe that by us making sure that we're paying attention to supporting the art that truly matters, that we're fostering critical engagement, that we're driving meaningful action, then we can learn so much from each other. How else should we really be spending our time, you know? And we're here for like a little blip, and like, what a better way to be spending our time than learning from each other. We don't have enough time to figure everything out on our own. We have to take things from each other. We have to. That's survival. I want to say thank you all, especially to my channel supporters. I've realized that some of the topics that I've been talking about lately can bring out a lot of ugliness, and I'm really happy to say that it has been you guys that have kept me going. Y'all are the real MVPs. So please like and subscribe so that I can keep making videos. Share your opinion, let me know your thoughts. Please keep it nice and respectful. I do not want to have to block you, and there's a lot of fun stuff going on here that I don't want you to miss out on. I used to let it ride, but the block game's on point. Just keep it a buck. That's all I got for you. I will see y'all in the next one.
Very good.
Good morning, y'all. It's actually not morning. It's pretty into the afternoon. I think it's like, what, 1 o'clock? Maybe 1 o'clock, y'all. We're so late to Rose Bowl. But since it's Christmas time, it's time to shop for family and friends. I'm not very great at gifting, but one thing I'm good at, putting together mystery bundles. So I'm putting together a mystery bundle for my sister, and we're getting all her pieces from the Rose Bowl fleet. Because it's my twin sister, that means we have absolutely no budget. She did send me her Pinterest board, her measurements, and it is so outside of my style, y'all. I'm all about Y2K, a little sprinkle of 90s, but my sister, her Pinterest board was full of stripes, velvet. It's very boho, but like witchy at the same time, so I don't feel like I have the eye for it. And it's time for our monthly matches. Yay, thank you so much. I have a pink one and I have a blue one. We're adding green to the collection now. These are totally my sister. In her Pinterest board, she had a few necklaces that kind of have like this style. They're like super small, intricate, and detailed. I know my sister really likes purple. I was asking her what her favorite colors are, so I really like these for her. Or maybe even, I don't know how she feels about pink. I feel like pink is more my color. Or are these better? Because they are purple, but I don't feel like they're that noticeable. The green just kind of stands out a little bit more. So, yeah. Okay, we'll do green then. Our first purchase, we got them, y'all. We have some earrings, and I know I said there's no budget, but I at least want to disclose prices. Only $6.
I love Teletubbies. That's one thing. And then look at what Dan just found. A Poe backpack. Yeah, I know. I wonder how much I asked for it.
We're going for $75 each. Are these vintage? Yeah. Nice. I don't know why I thought it was going to be a cold day. I know I'm wearing a mini skirt, but I have a sweater on and all I have is a bralette underneath. I'm dying already. I'm sweating so much. So if we can come across a cute top that'll go well with my outfit, then we'll go ahead and buy it.
I'm an Eagles fan. Go Birds.
I'm pretty sure they won today, right?
Yeah.
We haven't checked the final score, but we're pretty sure they won.
Oh, it was 22-16.
22-16.
Yeah.
Go Birds! Came across this Levi's little dress. I think this is super cute. I don't know, but something about the waistband kind of reminds me of my sister. The only thing is, waistbands are tricky with us because we're short. I'm 5'3", my sister's 5'2", and we don't have long torsos, but I feel like this is pretty reminiscent to something else that she had on her Pinterest. I'll put it somewhere up here. I think she had Carrie Bradshaw on there. So I think this is gonna be a maybe. Also, I'm so dumb. I forgot to bring a measuring tape. All last night, I was just like, Danielle, don't forget a measuring tape. Bring a measuring tape. And I forgot it. I'm just waiting for those pieces to like pop out and be like, hey, take me for your sister. And I feel like this did it for me. This is so cute. And I like how it has the two prints. The only thing is, look, this one's actually damaged. We have a little hole on the bust. So I think we're gonna leave it behind because I feel like even if I do repair it, it might be a little noticeable. One thing about my sister is that she loves her like autumn fall colors. So auburn, brown, dark greens. I think I really like this for her. And in her Pinterest, she had a whole bunch of like mini vests. My sister is notorious for buying oversized clothes and they end up just like swallowing her. So I feel like this would be so good. It's true vintage. So I think I'm gonna try it. I can't try it on because I have nothing on underneath. Okay, I think we're just gonna rely on some measurements then. It is cropped. It's gonna fit her more boxy, I think, which, you know what? I'm gonna try it on. How do we, my buttons, they're caught. What do we think about this? Okay, Arthur says it looks good. Let's look at the mirror. Oh, this is cute. Honestly, I think she'll like it. I feel like this is very much her style. I think we're gonna take it. Y'all, we have our second item and it's this little vest. Super cute, and this is from Kites Fly Yellow. We got it for 30 bucks. It's from this booth, y'all. I follow them on Instagram, and just recently, their husband purchased a storage unit full of a whole bunch of 90s Y2K pieces. I'm talking tags still attached. She literally has the original receipts, so y'all should come check her out. She said she's gonna bring that inventory in February. I've been wanting to level up my outfits with sunglasses or just glasses in general. These I got at a flea market for like 20 bucks, and to be honest, they're really lopsided. But I feel like if you don't look at them for too long, they look good. But they have a whole bunch here. They have these, which I think are pretty cool. They have like a little brown tint to them. Let's see what this is looking like. I feel like the square frames look really good on me. These are going for 150 bucks. But luckily, I know of a company that specializes in glasses that are both stylish and affordable. They're called VooGlam. And even though I may have 20/20 vision, that does not stop me from using glasses as a fashion exception. They have a defining cute needs glasses that have a whole, which means when VooGlam day warranty, these are big hide your glasses in case most because they have more of a cat eye. I was just like, yes, add them to the bag. Let's check out. I think it's super. Here are the last glasses. These are the ones that I've been wearing, and they're Bessie and green. These have an oval shape to them. They're more of a medium size, but these have major vintage inspo, especially with the gold details. These are giving a chic Grammy in the best way possible. Shopping the VooGlam website is also super easy because they have a ton of filters to use, and it just makes your selection process so much easier. They have a ton of product images, but I love their on-person feature, so you can take a picture or either upload it directly from your phone, so that way you can kind of get an idea of what they would look like on your actual face. When you come across a listing with frames that you like, I would just click into it. I love it when companies do this, but the listings are super detailed. Low-key kind of brings me back to my copywriting days, but it gives you everything from a thorough description, measurements, the materials, the shape, and even the weight. So whether you're a 20/20 girly or you genuinely need glasses to see, I would check out VooGlam. I have a link and a promo code down below in the description box. Huge thanks to VooGlam for sponsoring today's video. Let's get back to Rose Bowl Fleet. This is so cute. I know we're shopping for my sister, y'all, but I might just have to take this with me. Actually, maybe I'll just check her, you know what? This just might be on her Pinterest board. I'm gonna look this up real quick, but I really like that one, so we'll have Arthur hold on to that. This is literally the prettiest thing ever. Isn't this so, I feel like a pretty little ballerina in this. They were saying that it's made of like a whole bunch of slips and nightgowns. Oh my gosh, y'all, I'm literally so obsessed. The only thing is going for $85. So I think it's one of those pieces where if I'm still thinking about it at the end of Rose Bowl, I'll come back for her. So I'm looking at the stripes that are in my sister's Pinterest board. Okay, the only difference is that this is like color block stripes. These are kind of differing. They kind of blend more together, and the colors on this one is just a little bit more obnoxious. So I wish they had this one, but in darker colors. But I'm starting to doubt myself. Should we get this one though?
I do think she'll like that one.
I think
She does wear a lot of orange and brown.
Yeah, Arthur's saying that she wears a lot of orange and browns, and I can see her wearing those with like trousers. So, okay. I also really like this one here. This vest I feel like has a little bit more, oh my gosh, structure to it. I just hate that it's giving America, super patriotic. I wish it were more fallish. This isn't really my style, but my sister had it on her Pinterest board. I don't know what she likes about him exactly. Like, this obviously stood out because of the texture. I don't know. Personally, I would never wear this in my life, so I don't know if it's cute or not. I think they have a fitting room back there. I love that they have that here at Rose Bowl. I'll at least try it on, and I feel like if I could pull it off, then I can see my sister wearing it. And if not, Michelle, I don't know why you like this type of stuff. I feel like she's really into like the 60s, 70s type style, so she's really into cords and wearing like statement trousers. And I found these for her, but my stupid self forgot my measuring tape, so I'm just gonna have Arthur hold those for a minute, and then we'll try them on later. What do we think? Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It's not that bad, but my sister and our torsos are super short. Why do I think she would like that cami there? Right? That cami's so cute. Okay, we'll try that on afterwards. We also don't have boobs. Like, we both have small little A-cup babies. I'm literally wearing a bralette right now, so I feel like this isn't doing anything for me, but the straps are a little too big. So if we can find something else like this that's a size small instead of a medium, we'll take it, just not this one. I think it is cute. I just don't know if it'll fit her though, because I think she is a medium and I'm more of a small, and I feel like even this is pretty fitted on me. Like, it feels a little restrictive, and she and I have very broad shoulders. Like, we have very similar body types. And then how much is this one going for? This one's going for $30, so I think that's a little too expensive to be unsure about, you know? Like, I want to be for sure about it. So we'll think about her. We have two other stripe pieces in here, y'all. This one I feel like is too light colored and pastel. I honestly like this, but this is a little bit too much purple, but I feel like we're getting there. We're almost there. Now that I'm a kitty mom, I can indulge in all the cat clothes that I come across. This is so cute because usually when I come across these type of vests, they're very oversized and big. This one's cropped and fitted, but it has a price tag of 40 bucks, which, you know what, I feel like it's kind of worth it because I don't really come across pieces like this. I'll think about it for sure. But I know that this vendor sells all over Los Angeles, so if anything, I can always just DM her on Instagram if I really want it. I only pulled this out because when my sister came over the other day, she literally wore a top like this, but it was short sleeve. And now this one is a long sleeve. She had a whole bunch of long sleeve in her Pinterest board, and I like that it flares out just a little bit. The lace-up detail underneath the $25 tag also is pretty nice. And this one has a paper tag too. So I'm liking that. I don't know, I kind of like it, but Arthur doesn't like it. Y'all, I know my sister so well. I did have to just text her and call her for confirmation. I just sent a photo of like literally the corner of the shirt just to see if she liked the print, and she said she liked it a lot, so we're gonna take it. We have our, what is this, our third item now? Okay, we've gotten a lot of tops. I do want to get one bottom. Y'all, wait, this is so my sister, no? This little mesh top. I don't think my sister really does mesh though. No, she's more about like velvet, thicker fabrics, but here's our next item. I think it's super cute. It might not look like much just like this, but I feel like once it's styled, once she has like some brown boots on, it'll look really cute. Another piece spoke out to me, y'all. She had a ton of jackets. This is so my sister. This is literally her in a button-up jacket. Yeah, and this is a petite extra small, which us and our broad shoulders, it would have to feel like a little oversized. So I'm hoping this runs a little bit big. We'll hold on to it because I feel like this booth is pretty promising. So we have this one here. My sister's a big lover of paisley, and so I thought this would have been really pretty, and it's also XOXO, but it's a size large. If only this were a size medium, it would have been perfect. So I'm gonna be on the hunt for something similar to this. I probably look very frumpy. I'm giving like SpongeBob muscles, but I mean, if it can fit me with this really thick oversized sweater on, I think it'll work for her. This is definitely a piece that my sister can like top off her outfits with. I don't know if maybe the sleeves are a little short, or maybe it's just because I have the sweater on underneath. Arthur's saying that my sister wears short sleeves like this anyway, so okay, we'll take it. We have our next item. It's been purchased, y'all. I think it's looking a little top heavy though, so I want to find some skirts, pants, maybe even a dress. But I'm thinking about like maybe 2 more items because we're nearly done with the white section here. Arthur's always gonna find the Eagles gear. This is the back is looking like. That's awesome. Yeah, it's going for $100. I like it. That's pretty good. Yeah, that's usually how much he spends on his puffers, though. So that's kind of a little bit more pricey. But we're still looking for my sister. Y'all, they're already wrapping up. Everyone's packing up pretty early. We spoke with some of the vendors, and they're saying that it's pretty slow today. And that, oh my gosh, this is screwing my sister. What are you? Oh, this is cute. I don't know, I feel like I'm into it, but would my sister be? So many of the pieces that I'm finding for my sister, they're always a size large. I feel like this would have been so cute for her.
All right, we got Danny here measuring the waist of these. It's at a 32 waist, and
The hip would have been perfect.
hip is 40, right? Yeah, a little bit too big for her, so we'll pass on those for now. Found another pair of cords, but it might be a little bit too big too. Yeah, looks like it is. On the yeah, on the hips would have fit, but the waist a little bit too big, so we'll pass on those.
Y'all, we have 23 minutes left. 23 minutes until Rose Bowl is done. Everyone is already packing up. I'm kind of feeling the pressure because we haven't gotten my sister any bottoms yet. Like, I wanted to include some sort of skirt or pants or even a dress, and we're not finding anything, so we're just gonna kind of like sprint through it. I didn't think we would find another one of these crinkly shirts. And look, there's actually another one. Only this one's giving more Hawaiian, vacation, very tropical. And I know for a fact that's not my sister. So I'm gonna put that back. It sucks to have small little calf muscles because these socks are actually some. And look at this. I was trying to be innovative. Y'all, these are actually the little ties on a like mask, a face mask. But they keep falling down. Oh, is it visible? I don't know how I feel about this, but my sister had these like little granny squares on her Pinterest board. But this is just another vest. Do we want to do another vest? No, I think we already have a vest. I want to, you know, mix it up. But I mean, this texture would have been pretty nice. Or maybe something like this. That is really cute. And it looks like these are handmade too. Leaving Y2K and like the menswear with whatever I've showed so far. We haven't picked up anything new. Rose Bowl is now closed, but you know, it does take people a little bit to like pick up and break down their tent just because it's a lot of inventory. So we still have quite a few booths to look over. I at least want to get one more item. She also had some accessories on her Pinterest board. Oh, I like the texture on this. But velvet, y'all. We need the velvet. We need soft. I don't see anything here. I see stripes, y'all. I got stripes on my mind, especially because my sister had a whole bunch of them. So let's see, we have this, another vest. Why do I keep picking up vests? Or we have this, which is cute, just not her style.
These ones are 32 waist, so a little bit too big. And then the hips, what is that? I can't really see that. 41.
Doesn't look like it has a closure on it, so we have some stitching. And in the groin area too. Oh my gosh, these would have been perfect because she has some striped pants just like this and their trousers, but yeah, they just fit a little too big. We have more stripes here, which would have been cute. Oh, this jacket though. Yeah, she would have loved this one actually.
She's gonna try on this jacket real quick. Let's see, what size is that one? This is large. Size large. What do y'all think?
Beige.
Let's see. It looks beige, yeah.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I feel like this is one of those like tricky colors. We're having absolutely horrible luck on the racks. And thankfully this last section, I think it's because it's right next to the entrance. They don't clean up quite yet because everyone leaves and has to pass by through here. But can't say no to a deal. $7 or 2 for 10. And I'm hoping I could run into at least one last item for my sister. Y'all, what if we did like a grail item for my sister? This was, I'm pretty sure that, was this under Pinterest? Can you pull it up on your phone real quick? So we have this one here that's pretty similar, only it's not leather. This one again is velour or like velvet. We also have stuff like this, plaid and check. Or we have this one here. So, I mean, it is pretty different. This one's damaged though. Like if you look at the sleeve and right here, there's a lot of pilling. But maybe we can just ask how much it is, so hold on. It's going for $25. I say why not? How is it from the back? Is it pretty damaged? Oh, I think I have a hole there, huh? Yeah, and then it's got a hole there. Yeah. Oh, does it look cool on though or no? I just don't know if my sister would like it because it is pretty damaged. But I feel like we found it and it's the thought that counts, right? But no, I do wish it was in better condition. Look what Arthur's taking home for our babies. Arthur got his purchase. It's so awesome because they're handmade. And we rarely come across pet supplies with Eagles branding on it, so $45. This is kind of cute. Is it kind of cute? She has an image pinned of boots that has granny squares and it has like little crochet details like this. This is super cute. But again, I have my sweater under here, so I don't really know if it fits properly, but I kind of like this. I feel like she can really have fun with her outfits if she topped it off with this. But they're asking $125. It is slightly damaged right here, but I don't know. Is this too much of a wild card? I failed, y'all. It's 4 o'clock. Rose Bowl is done, but I'm still gonna give my sister this bundle, so I wanted to show it off. But here's our haul. We have a pet bed. We have this jacket, button front closure. You can't really tell unless you're super up close, but it has beads sewed all over it, and I think that's super cute. And then we have this shirt here that I'm not totally confident about, but she did say she really liked the print of it. Velour construction, a little lace-up detail. It has all the colors that she likes, and she had a ton of long sleeves on her Pinterest, but I especially like that these are flared a bit. And then we have this vest. She had a crap ton of vests liked, and this one I feel like it looks like true vintage, so I think she'll really appreciate that. And she can just do little trousers, some boots, and it'll look really good. And surprisingly, we've got some accessories. This was the very first thing that we picked up, and they're just some earrings. She's also very much a gold girl, so they're perfect. Y'all, that pretty much does it for thrifting for a mystery bundle for my sister for Christmas at Rose Bowl Flea. As always, y'all, I do post videos at least once a week. I'll see you in the next one. Bye! On the way home, we made a pit stop at a thrift store, and I came across the perfect bottoms. This was just what I was needing to really complete the mystery bundle, but they're corduroy. They have more of a straight leg, an all-over floral print. This is just screaming my sister.
This video is brought to you by Squarespace, an all-in-one platform for building your brand and growing your business online. Hello, hello, my spider monkeys. Wait, did I just say spider monkey? Not me being in a twilight state of mind.
You better hold on tight, spider monkey.
Oh my gosh. Okay, flying monkey, redo. Hello, hello, my beautiful flying monkeys. You notice this background is not my usual background. Once again, I am not at home because actually I just moved out of my apartment a couple weeks ago. I've moved out of New York City. I've been kind of like edging this for a long time, but I wanted to wait until my lease was up, and it was December 1st. So now I've been kind of just like bumping around. This is not my place. I'm still looking for a permanent situation, and hopefully it won't take that much longer. Hopefully next time I'll have like a more decorated space, but bear with me during this trying time. So today I want to talk about Wicked. As a disclaimer, I'm incredibly biased when it comes to musicals, but I'm trying to go about this in the fairest way that I can. I'm like clenching my fists as I say this because I just like... It's impossible for me to have a bad time if I'm watching people sing and dance and perform and, you know, the whole hoopla. I love musicals.
5, 6, 7, 8.
Musicals just scratch a totally different part of my brain in the way that like Marvel movies scratch the balls for a certain demographic of men. They elicit a purely pleasurable experience for me.
Can I say, I love the theater.
Even if I don't think the plot makes that much sense, or if I think the characters are kind of underdeveloped, it won't mess with my enjoyment of the musical movie, which is why, on a base, primal level, I controversially loved Wonka, and I stand by it.
I'm making chocolate, of course.
And on a base primal level, I also loved Wicked. It's not my favorite musical by any means, and I'm receptive to people's criticisms against it. I've read a bunch of like negative reviews. And yes, I agree with some points. Like I think the fascism allegory has always seemed kind of half-baked in the same way that Zootopia is kind of half-baked in its racism allegory. And yes, I thought the first part dragged a bit while the ending was rushed. And yes, I do think its commentary on what it means to be good and evil is confusing and messy. But to be fair, it's also confusing and messy in the book it's based on. In the end, I am a simple woman, and when I see Jonathan Bailey do the theater kid smirk and dancing through life, and when I hear Cynthia Erivo sing literally anything, and when I see beautiful, ridiculously ornate costumes, I just transcend onto a higher plane. I've also seen this musical before on stage, and so I knew what to expect when it came to the story and music. I actually also posted a short review of the original book on TikTok and Instagram recently if you're interested. The only thing I was actually hesitant about going into the movie was the visuals. And this is because for months leading up to the movie's premiere, so many people were complaining about the color grading.
Some people have complaints about the colors.
It's hideous.
Why does Wicked look terrible?
It looks bland, it looks washed out. Why do all blockbusters look like this now?
Bring warm tones and colors back to fantasy movies.
You think Wicked looks gray?
Not gray?
Now, I'm not here to be a hater, but
such
as
a
much as
shame
we all love
But the
Wicked,
color grading and the lighting.
Their complaints stemmed from like the first trailer and early promotional images, but after Wicked premiered,
I saw the Wicked movie.
the discourse schismed for some reason in a more confusing way. Some watchers thought the movie was actually incredibly vibrant.
I can't even describe the joy that I felt when I watched it,
sparking a whole new meme format of people making fun of the color grade nitpickers, but other watchers still thought the movie was too desaturated.
I find the movie like at times unwatchable because of the way that the CGI, the production design, and the colorization of the movie intersects. The way that this movie is colored like makes me want to hurt myself.
Which made me question, what is happening? Like, didn't we all watch the same movie? Today I want to dive into some of the production history of The Wizard of Oz and why its coloring was so beloved by audiences and just what the hell happened with Wicked. In this day and age, I feel like everyone needs a website, whether to be an artistic portfolio or a storefront for your side hustle. And Squarespace...
I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
People throw around the word Technicolor a lot in these discussions because The Wizard of Oz was filmed in Technicolor. Technicolor is a company that was founded in 1915, and they're most famous for their 3-strip color process that was used in a number of films from the 1930s to 1950s, including The Adventures of Robin Hood, Meet Me in St. Louis, and Black Narcissus. The Technicolor 3-strip process created bright reds, deep blues and greens, and highly controlled contrast between lights and darks. I'll explain how the Technicolor 3-strip process worked. If you get lost, it's okay, you don't need to know, but this is just for people who are interested in this kind of stuff. So you would record a scene on 3 separate rolls of black and white film. The camera had a special prism and a filter system to split the incoming light into its red, green, and blue components. Once the 3 films were developed, each served as a record of one primary color in the scene. These records were used to create color matrices, which were strips of film coated with a special emulsion that captured the intensity of each color. These matrices acted like stamps, so after they were loaded with dyes, they were pressed into blank film stock in sequence. The dye was absorbed by the stock, creating a dye transfer print. The final result was stunning. The prints had fine grain, rich and vibrant colors, deep blacks, and excellent contrast. Plus, the process was meticulously monitored in the lab to catch any flaws like dust or scratches. But capturing those initial color records required using the very giant, bulky Technicolor camera. One of the cameras used for The Wizard of Oz specifically was the DF-24 camera, invented in 1932. It was 106 inches high on a wheeled sled, almost 6 feet long, and weighed about 77 pounds. On top of how cumbersome it was, Technicolor only built 29 of these cameras for use in the US. So if more than one color film was shooting at the same time, cast and crew sometimes had to wait their turn for equipment, delaying the filming process. To make things even more inefficient, Technicolor didn't sell these cameras. Instead, the studios had to rent them. And once they were done for the day, the Technicolor technician would take the cameras back to the Technicolor plant each night, where every camera was then taken apart and cleaned for the next day. Shooting on film also required a lot of exterior light because there was no way to check the footage during the shooting process. This was before the days of digital. If by the time you got to developing the film, you realized that everything was just way too dark and nothing was visible, it was too late. The set was wrapped up, we've moved on. So filmmakers would flood the sets with these lights to ensure that they were going to capture something. For The Wizard of Oz, 150 arc lamps were used to brighten the interior sets, raising temperatures to a super comfortable 100 degrees or more. Honestly, do not know how the Cowardly Lion survived.
Shucks, folks, I'm speechless.
There's also a fire inspector on set every day of the shooting because of the heat of the lamps, and also because of the highly flammable nitrate film that was used at the time. Nitrate film, by the way, is more flammable than gasoline. Ray Bolger, the actor who played the Scarecrow, said later, "The Wizard of Oz was one of the most difficult jobs I've ever done. It was just physical work and under very trying circumstances. We were using 1,000-foot candle power with hot light and chewing up the oxygen in the studio." But these are the costs to get such a beautiful looking film. In real life, the ruby slippers are a dark burgundy shade. I actually got to see them in Tokyo because they were doing some exhibit there. But they pop on screen thanks to the powerful lighting. However, it wasn't just the color saturation that made The Wizard of Oz such a beautiful movie. Color was tricky at the time. I mean, color is still tricky, but you know, I digress. Higher saturation on its own couldn't guarantee an amazing viewing experience. One film that was panned by critics, in part for its distracting use of color, was the 1935 movie Becky Sharp.
This specially prepared scene of Miriam Hopkins as Becky Sharp shows her transformed from phantom shadows into the breathless beauty of living color by the greatest achievement in motion pictures since the advent of sound.
To be fair, this was the first movie to use Technicolor's new 3-strip process. But regardless, the New York Times described in the review how even the most delightful of colors will display the most detestable tendencies given the opportunity. What was so lovely about The Wizard of Oz was how meticulous and purposeful the coloring choices were. The most obvious example is the dramatic change from sepia to color once Dorothy leaves Kansas and enters Oz. In the book that the movie is based on, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, author L. Frank Baum had written less than 1,000 words of Dorothy's time in Kansas. However, the first screenwriter for the film adaptation, Herman Mankiewicz, wrote a 17-page treatment on the Kansas sequence alone, and detailed, before a word of the script had been written, by the way, this is how locked in they were, that the Kansas shots should be filmed in black and white. And quote, "Every effort should be made through tinting to emphasize the gray nature of the landscape and Dorothy's daily life." In the end, the Kansas sequences were filmed in black and white, but then the film was placed in a brown bath to take away the harshness of the black and white and give it its sepia tinge that we see on screen today. Another example, in the original novel, Dorothy's magical footwear was silver, and this was a detail that they actually kept in the Wicked movie because of copyright issues. But when it came to the movie adaptation, The Wizard of Oz, it was screenwriter Noel Langley who was credited for penning the shoes as ruby slippers in his draft. There's not a confirmed reason why the shoes were switched to red. It's possible that Langley intuitively thought red would pop more magically in Technicolor. But also to note, silver was unpredictable in Technicolor and required a bluish tinge to photograph properly. If not precise, the silver hue would be swallowed up and canceled out against a yellow brick road. And the yellow brick road would have had priority as a constant set element because yellow could vary if the intensity of lighting was inconsistent. So it's also totally possible that the ruby slippers were chosen over silver slippers as a result of preliminary color testing. The film's art director, Randall Duell, said, "Color film wasn't perfected then. We had to do a lot of testing and experimenting with the film to get the colors to reproduce properly. We'd start filming a set a week or two before it was going to be used. We had to color test each set, not only for the paints on the set, but for the background. Part of the yellow brick road was a painted backing, a backdrop. If that backdrop wasn't painted and lit properly, it would look like a painted backdrop." And speaking of backdrops, this was a fun fact. The cornstalks in the Scarecrow set were initially authentic cornstalks, but they withered under the intense lighting. So the cornstalks were thrown away and replaced with a more robust celluloid cornfield. Then, one of the directors, George Cukor, suggested adjustments to soften the backdrop to make it look more naturalistic and to add a row of fences in diminishing perspective to create more depth. The end result for all this hard work was a beautiful, vivid movie with directional choices that were incredibly well thought out. So, why don't we still use Technicolor today? Technicolor eventually lost out to competition from other color processes. By 1954, most color films made in the US were being shot in Eastman color or Ansco color. Eastman color and other similar processes were cheaper and therefore more appealing to studios. Also, new widescreen systems could not be used with Technicolor's 3-strip process.
The new VistaVision film negative, twice as big,
twice as clear as the old-style negative.
Technicolor ended up retiring its 3-color cameras, and in the 1960s, the company diversified its options and entered the consumer market. While Technicolor always had its limitations, Richard Haynes writes in his book, Technicolor Movies, The History of Dye Transfer Printing, that the Eastman color prints look good, but not glorious. The dyes were not as vibrant as in the Technicolor process, and blacks were pretty transparent. Technicolor copies also aged better, whereas all negatives and prints made in Eastman color prior to 1983 faded. The long-standing saturation of Technicolor helped cement, I think, The Wizard of Oz as one of the most colorful movies in our collective imagination, and which evidently sets an incredibly high standard for any Oz adaptation that follows it.
D for dull and for depressing, dismal and dead.
But these days, it seems like the movies coming out are so flat and drab that any kind of film stock is more desirable than what we have now. As Emily St. James wrote for Vox in 2022, so many TV shows and movies now have a dull filter applied to every scene, one that cuts away vibrancy and trends towards a boring sameness. Every frame's color scheme ends up feeling the same as every other frame. And when there are so many projects using similar techniques, you end up with a world of boring visuals that don't stand out. Similar complaints about color dullness and bad lighting have plagued the internet over the last few years, emphasized in one of my favorite memes. Men in LA, get off your phones and stop being influencers. We need gaffers. These shows dark as hell. I can't see shit. As another example, Twitter user Katie Stebbins posted a side-by-side comparison of screenshots from season 1 of Dexter, which aired in 2006, and the new Dexter limited series, which came out in 2021. The 2006 screen cap is much more vibrant. There's way more depth in contrast. Meanwhile, the 2021 screen cap is pale, low contrast, and Michael C. Hall's skin is tinged an inhuman shade of yellow-green. He looks a little jaundiced. It's easy to think that the reason movies looked better back in the day was because they were shot on film. Season 1 of Dexter was actually shot on film. But digital is not totally at fault. I love film just as much as everyone, but there's been plenty of beautifully colored digital projects like Moonlight, Midsommar, Dune, and The Holdovers, the last one which replicated the old school film look pretty accurately, I think. So it's not the medium itself, it's the process of how we use the medium. As I said before, the reason why early sets were flooded with light was because there was no way to know how the film would look until it was already developed. So to be safe and to save money, film sets employed a lot of light. But when you're shooting digital, you're able to see how the footage is looking in real time. While this allows more freedom, shooting on digital can sometimes be a crutch for filmmakers. They don't have to be as meticulous with their lighting, set design, and shot composition anymore because everything can be reshot a million times and or tweaked later on in post-production. Cinematographer Shasta Spahn explained how inexperience or laziness can fuck up night scenes pretty easily. She said, the sensors on the camera are so sensitive and they have so much latitude now, I would say it's easy for people who don't have much experience to go out in the dark and shoot a scene and think they've mastered it.
So this is the
but it still
strap.
requires knowledge of the color grade, scale, exposure, and knowing what your limits.
So I'm just gonna put it into this. And I think that's it. I don't want to work on this anymore. This is the inside. It comes out. Thank you. I've been working on it for the past couple days. I put studs at the bottom. Not studded, studs. But all I have left to do is to put the strap on.
Limits are. Night scenes can be done and are done so beautifully, but they're also done so poorly. There's also just been a larger trend throughout the 2010s towards darkly lit projects because it carries connotations of grit and seriousness. Cinematographer Christian Springer also told Vox that film actually is naturally less saturated than digital, outside of Technicolor, and filmmakers might be making their productions dark because they want to replicate a film vibe. It sounds confusing, but let me read what he said because he says it so much better than I do. When digital cameras showed up, they naturally had more saturation and more pop to them. For a while there, everything we saw was super saturated and super poppy. If you go to Best Buy to buy television, you're looking at these incredible color demos of the most colorful colors possible. I think a lot of filmmakers almost see that as an antithesis to cinema. If you really look back on a lot of cinema history, a lot of things are not overly colorful and saturated like that. So I think people are pulling that back to try to make digital a little bit more like film. The director of Wicked, John Chu, echoed these ideas when asked why he made his film more desaturated than the original Wizard of Oz. He said, I mean, there's color all over it. I think what we wanted to do was immerse people into Oz to make it a real place. Because if it was a fake place, if it was a dream in someone's mind, then the real relationships and the stakes that these two girls are going through wouldn't feel real. I think this is a similar thought process for some of the live action Disney remakes like The Little Mermaid and Peter Pan and Wendy. I guess the filmmakers want to make the live action versions seem a bit more real than their fun, colorful 2D counterparts. That choice doesn't really make any sense to me because their target audience is still children, but I digress. But for Wicked, I sort of get what she was saying. Wicked is supposedly the adult, real story of the Wizard of Oz that captures the underlying political turmoil of Oz and offers commentary on the nuances of good versus evil. The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy's version, on the other hand, is an idealized world experienced over a relatively short period of time by a 12-year-old girl. Her vision of Oz would always be more colorful in comparison to her home in Kansas. But for Elphaba and Glinda, Oz is the only place that they know. There is no bland Kansas to juxtapose. And not to play devil's advocate with myself, I also think that the Wicked musical provides a lot of fan service to the original Wizard of Oz.
The melody of the Unlimited theme is actually the first 7 notes of Somewhere Over the Rainbow, which is...
And this became even more evident to me when I looked at the original Wicked book that it's based on. So the Wicked book is a 500-plus page monster that mostly focuses on the political and religious turmoil in the land of Oz rather than the character relationships. It's a revisionist tale and diverges quite a lot from the Wizard of Oz canon.
Bach took stock, as best his stumbling mind could manage, an erect tiger in hip boots and a cape.
What?
Okay. The musical adaptation, on the other hand, seamlessly aligns itself with The Wizard of Oz and acts essentially as like a parallel story just from a different perspective. I'm going to give out a few spoilers, so skip to this timestamp if you don't want to be spoiled for the book or for the rest of the musical. In the musical screenplay, the character Bach becomes the Tin Man, and the character Fiyero becomes the Scarecrow. But in the book, the Tin Man's true identity is like a random side character that doesn't even get like one speaking line, and the Scarecrow's true identity is never revealed. In the musical, Madame Morrible conjures the tornado that brings Dorothy to Oz, whereas in the book, the tornado's creation is never discussed. It just sort of like appears. Meanwhile, major plot points in the book that don't coincide with the Wizard of Oz canon, like Elphaba having a son, Nessa Rose's religious tyranny, the political tension between Munchkinland and the rest of Oz, and Fiyero's family life are...
Wait a second, girl. Let's play some music. It's cute. Let's see. Sure, this one. Okay.
Yeah, there are slight changes. I mean, it's always a very good lineup. I mean, it's quite consistent. Well, it changes.
Kind of a practice one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm playing slightly.
I thought I was
than,
gonna
say,
just
for 1 year.
freestyle it. I wanted to stop halfway through because I don't really like the design very well. Thank you. See, I like it too. In terms of like the way it's made. But
well, very diverse.
what I don't like
selection
is the design and the colors. So like overall, I do like the bag.
It really depends on.
I just don't
the
like.
crowd and the audience, how far I can go
you
in
know.
terms of
Wait a minute, is he talking to?
how deep I can go in terms of the music, or
No talking. Anyway. I like the way it's made. I just don't like the color and the design. But that's it. I'll probably start working on another one tomorrow. I don't know, we'll see. Maybe next time we'll change the design of the bag. But this is cute. I like the studs at the bottom. Thank you, thank you. Yes. That is it for me today, though. I'll continue tomorrow. Maybe I'll start, like, after stream. Like, I'll start looking into, like, a design. Maybe off stream, just so I can, like, really, like, wrap my mind around it. But that's gonna be it for me. I'm heading out. Probably eat some food. Relax. And just chill. But thank you, Breaks, for the follow. And thank you, King, for hanging out towards the end. Thank you. Have a good night.